Hello, beautiful people, and welcome to the Occult Exploration Society Live. I'm Snappy, and I'm joined as always by my co-host, Dion. How's it going, Dion?
Life is beautiful Sunday evening. Welcome, everybody.
Amazing. And we're here today with our special guests, Neal of Gnostic Informant and Dr. Ammon of Lady Babylon 666. How's it going, guys?
Hell Satan.
Ditto. Hey, thanks for having me, at least. Neal, say thank you to Snappy, man. Come on.
Oh, I'm excited. I hope we do this every month. Like I said last month, we got to keep doing these. So
that's the plan. Every new moon, we hope to, bearing the unforeseen, we plan to be here to talk weirdness and to get mad with you all. And today we want to get extraordinarily mad. We want to talk about two of the most important deities of antiquity and two of the most important deities for the founding of our mutual societies. That is Liber and Libertas, right? Dionysus, and how do you say her name in the Greek? Ammon, Eleutheria. How do you pronounce it?
Eleutheria. Eleutheria. Isn't that nice? Eleutheria. From that one word, they think Eleusis ultimately derives its origin. Yeah, love it. So it's big. Yeah.
So it shows up right next to Iakos and Yakar in those Mycenaean tablets from Pylos. So there's something going on in the city of Pylos in the Mycenaean period where there's Iakos, Yakar, rising morning star, swelling of the fruits, plus this Eleutheria, the goddess. So the mysteries go back to who knows how far back they go.
They go so far back into prehistory, right? When I was looking into this Dionysian cult, what I started to find in the comparative mythology and in the archaeological and anthropological literature is this whole discussion around, you mentioned it, Iakar, which is related to the dog star. So we have from several different places very similar stories. And it's always goes like this. Ammon can contest to the Greek version of this, but the story goes, you have a stranger who shows up from the east. He is killed in a sacrificial offering. And through his death, there is a vine that ascends a tree. And sometimes this vine is given birth directly by the dog star herself. Sometimes the dog star shines her light on the vine. But either way, there's a connection between that goddess, the star, Myra in the Greek, and the vine. And the god becomes the vine, ascending after her by rising up the tree to point towards this dog star. And this seems to be the central myth from which Dionysus springs. What do you guys think?
Oh, absolutely. I think there's 100%. And there's no wonder that Herodotus in the 5th century BC, when he went to Egypt and started learning about Osiris, he just thought they were talking about Dionysus, because they told him the same stories about every summer the dog star rises, and when the dog star rises, the floods come. It's like it's an omen from the heavens, and this dog star has it's connected to both Isis and Osiris. So when Herodotus is hearing this, he's going, "Oh yeah, that's Dionysus. That's Bacchus and the Great Mother, and yeah, we know about that." So he's just in his own mind, he just hears that and goes, "Yeah, we know that story."
I like the mother side of it. I love coming through simile and having Eleutheria there is that ultimate freedom and that power to bring, and I'm going to show you in Homer, to bring the birth of the child, right? That is the true mania of the ladies who dance on the hilltops. I love this stuff. Oh, God.
I love that you
ask one question, a quick question. Is that not a title of Artemis as well?
Yes, it is, right? And she is known as that midwife. So, and people are always like, how is the virgin goddess the midwife? Shut up. And look at the anthropology, right? Look at the anthropology and follow the drugs. And Homer even talks about the drug that they're using. This beautiful, beautiful group led by this beautiful divinity who is that great huntress. Definitely. Isn't that cool? The great huntress. Who? Oh, man, if I could go back.
Eternal Virgin, too.
Yep.
I mean,
Wow.
she's a perpetual virgin, always. That's the title that she gets all the time, no matter what. And I think, yeah. So there you go. That's what I meant.
It's part of the grand contradiction, right? And it's supposed to show her twin nature with cosmogonic Eros, who is Lucifer, right? If Lucifer is the all lust, then she must be the all virgin, right? But we both see that Lucifer is not all lustful, nor is Diana all virginal. These are poetic images, right?
That's how they drank it, with the Kylix too, just like that.
People were shocked when they found out Athena, the virgin goddess of Athens, that she was taking baths with nymphs. Yeah, she may have when Hephaestus was coming at her and self-pleasuring himself, you know what I mean? Giving himself that power that she wouldn't give him, and he spilled his seed and she's wiped it off and she's like, "You disgusto," right? She is actually taking baths, and I mean sexual when we say baths, not just shower, quick shower. She's involved with the nymphs, and one of them is a great prophet's mother. So don't be surprised. That violates so many things, doesn't it? Because she's the virgin. Imagine if Mary were having an affair with, I don't know, Mary Magdalene or someone. You know what I mean? Cool.
Yeah.
It's so amazing. And it just shows you how simplistic our minds are, right? Because again, right, what does the virgin mean in the Greek? We've had this conversation. It usually refers to its penetrative sex only with a man, right? It's a very limited definition.
It's an age. It's an age before it is any kind of descriptor for any sort of medicine. It is an age. It is the age of the bloom. If you don't understand that, it's because you're not paying attention to nature. Love it.
Right. So she's perpetually that young 9-year-old huntress, like you were talking about yesterday, with all her 9-year-old girls going out to go and spread poison.
Right. And that's why she needs a virgin goddess to watch over her and protect her. Right. Don't mess with her. And by the way, those same girls, they put into arenas in Libya and they fight it out. They duke it out. Right. So this is a kind of a training. Priestly training is kind of a thing that you and I really don't recognize. Kind of if you were to combine, I don't know, some kind of Shaolin monk fighting style with a priestess's training in dance and in music and in hunting. Dude, they got to know all the poisons, all the ones that are making them high, as well as all the ones that are going to kill the wild animals that we're fighting, right? Yeah. Wow. Love it.
But to bring things back to this Dionysus Libertas kind of thing that we're talking about, I really wanted to get into some of this because this is so many questions I get all the time asking, how can you be into the god of madness and wine? And it seems so wild and insane. And I really wanted to explore this image in depth so that people could see it in its true pagan complexity, because a lot of people just have a real misconception about what's going on here. So to start with our discussion before we get into Ammon's presentation, I have a couple quotes to give you all sort of an understanding of the Dionysian cult and what's really going on. So first we have this quote from Nietzsche. I don't think anyone really understood Dionysus better than Nietzsche. It goes, Dionysus is the frenzy which circles round wherever there is conception and birth, and which in its wildness is always ready to thrust forward into destruction. It is life.
That's right? It. That's so well said. This is what I was trying to explain when I was talking to Danny about Dionysus. People think Dionysus, they think of the Liber Pater that you get handed down from the Roman Christians, which is this drunken wine god only. Like he's like some minor god that's just relegated to wine. Like that's how they see paganism in general. All the gods have one function, but they're all complex. Dionysus is the most complex, and he's so beyond wine and partying. He's a god of life. He's also a god of death, and it's said so well here by Nietzsche. He's the swelling of the fruits. He's the light bringer. He's got all these functions that are so like he's so above being just a wine god. That's the point I'm trying to get across.
For sure. And I think a major problem, the big reason for this, is that his followers have largely been silenced. Who were the ones who worshipped Dionysus? The women, the Maenads. Who are stricken from the written record? The women, the Maenads. What is Dionysus? He is that male phallic symbol perceived through that feminine ideal, right? He is that kind of lust that causes generation of the earth, right? It's that masculine, but in this feminine lens. And if you cannot separate Dionysus from the Maenads, right? Wherever Dionysus goes, there are women who, whenever anyone's talking about Dionysus, it's women who are the authority. And that also needs to be understood. And that whole side of it has been obscured, you know?
And speaking of that, Dionysus was the swelling of the corn in down in Egypt, as Herodotus talks about, and James Fraser in the Golden Bog discusses this. And this is the I'm going to talk about this when I get to my part, when we go through how this time of the year, it was the second plowing of the year. It's the second harvest, where the new moon after the summer solstice marks the beginning of a whole new year, not just a new month. This is the new year now. Summer solstice was the new year. The rising of the dog star shows the new year. And that sickle, that new moon, that little sickle, that little silver sickle you see in the sky, that's when the moon god is telling the farmers to get their sickles and cut and harvest and cut the grapes and cut the corn. That's Dionysus, baby. He's swelling up right now. He's got a huge boner. That's his erection. That's a resurrection, by the way. And they even thought that the Horus, the child, was the resurrected Osiris, who is in the underworld, representing as the pharaoh on earth. So it's all Dionysian. And then, by the way, Diodorus tells the story about Zagreus getting torn apart by the Titans, but he tells the story, he just says Horus instead of Zagreus. So you can see how all that's going on, all that combination, all that syncretizing is going on. Are you muted, Snappy?
We have to understand that everything in all of our human perception is related through the image of the body. The ancients understood things as in this human figure. So it makes sense that we have all of this kind of perception and perceiving of things. And when you look at these ancient mother goddess cults, you see the same things over and over again. You must erect the phallus in order to please the mother, in order to draw her down. What does she want? She wants a large phallus. What are the pyramids about, right? What the pyramids are about is that's the state merging with religion. It's moving the mountain to where the rivers are so that you can build a city. But now you have the mountain, the giant phallus at the river, so you can draw down the goddess where you live. You know, it's that simple. And it's always about the same thing. What is the tree and the rising vine in the Dionysus myth? It's his phallus, which is rising and ascending to do what? To draw the mother down to earth. Why? You make her come, because when you make her come, the plants grow.
That's what they have in the teleste, in the inner sanctum of the mysteries, the holy of holies, if you want to call it that. It's the same thing. Is the phallus? That's what they have in there. It's the phallus. It's Dionysus.
It's not just the phallus, though. It's the phallus sitting inside of the vulva. Sitting inside of the vulva. It's that unity of forms. It's phonies reformed, right? It's that marriage, right? People forget this. In the Eleusinian mysteries is a marriage rite. You marry your higher self.
They actually did do marriages there. Literally.
Exactly.
Yeah,
because you're marrying your higher self, right? You have to marry yourself outside of time in order to exit this realm.
One of the famous marriages that was this one was in Samothrace, but Samothracian and the Eleusinian mysteries are very connected in a lot of ways. But one of the famous marriages that happened at the mysteries was Philip and Olympias, which gave birth to Alexander the Great. I mean, just think about that. Just let that simmer in your head for a second. One of the most famous marriages in the world that ultimately produced a child that everyone in the world knows who this person is. He's a household name, one of the most famous people of all time, who did something that no one will ever be able to reaccomplish. Alexander. And that happened as a result of a royal marriage that happened at the Mysteries. Isn't that crazy? That's crazy.
It's wild to think about. So I just want to read this quote from Dr. Carl Karenny, who wrote an amazing book that Neal, you sent me on Dionysus, called Dionysus, Archetypical Image of Primordial Life. And then I'll let Ammon take over. He has kind of a presentation, and we'll see maybe if Dion has some thoughts as well.
If anyone wants to get it on Amazon, this is one right here.
That's the book. Amazing read. So this is Carl Karenny. All right. Under the charm of the Dionysian, not only is the union between man and man reaffirmed, but nature, which has become alienated, hostile, or subjugated, celebrates once more her reconciliation with her lost son, man. Freely, earth proffers her gifts, and peacefully the beasts of prey of the rocks and desert approach. The chariot of Dionysus is covered with flowers and garlands. Panthers and tigers walk under its yoke. Transform Beethoven's Hymn to Joy into a painting. Let your imagination conceive the multitudes bowing to the dust, awestruck. Then you will begin to approach the Dionysian. Now the slave is a free man. Now all the rigid, hostile barriers that necessity, caprice, or impudent convention have fixed between man and man are broken. Now with the gospel of universal harmony, each one feels himself only united, reconciled, and fused with his neighbor, but as one with him, as if the veil of Maya has been torn aside, and we're now merely fluttering in tatters before the mysterious primordial unity. Wildness.
That's why that, if I can just jump in and add, that's why it would be odd for people to be hearing that you're servants of the Lord or servants of the God in the rite, because the rite itself makes you free. That's why you could not inhibit, you couldn't stop a slave from going off and celebrating with the Maenads. You couldn't prohibit it, right? That's against, you've just broken law there. That's religious law. That's not the kind that we write down. That's what we see in nature, baby, right? You cannot inhibit somebody's freedom. It really comes down to freedom. And Bacchic religion, which, Snappy, the point that you made about it being run by women, that's very important and totally overlooked, because it wouldn't be politically expedient for us to say, oh, look, women actually did a lot in antiquity. Right now, it's a lot better just to hear blah, 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 that they were kept in cages and hoo-ha, boo-ha, right? Well, here's an example. It's free, that you take your chains off when you go to worship Bacchus. So, I mean, what do you think your people are going to come back like? They're going to come back energized, you know what I mean? They're going to love that freedom. I love it. Bacchic worship, man.
What do you think, Dion?
Well, I have some questions from the people. One, you might cover it, though, in your presentation, but throwing one of the questions out early on is the role of Athena in democracy.
Yeah, let's talk about that. I'll just say something really fast. You wouldn't have courts, baby, without that Holy Virgin, number one. And you wouldn't have a line of technicians of the skills that they're using in the polis that are coming together, all the different, like professions that they have, the technical arts. You wouldn't have those without her. Right. So that spring, that wellspring of Athena that comes to democracy, first of all, it came through the establishment of justice. And if you don't believe me, go to Aeschylus, who is bringing Bacchus out of the procession onto the stage and exhibiting what the cult is. And when he does so, read the Eumenides. And watch how Athena provides us. It's not even Apollo. Apollo, is the vision is still there, but it's not him. It's the Virgin that gave us justice. Yeah. Nobody is above. Nobody is above that.
Oresteia is a must read. It's an absolute must read. Probably it's the most complete of the Greek tragedies. So if you're into this, you have to read it. There's no moving beyond it. And here's the thing: what does she do? Ammon hinted. Athena does two things. She establishes the courts of law. That is, the people, the chorus of the 1,000 come together to pass judgment, not the Furies. She calms the Furies and turns them into the Eumenides, the calmed ones. How does she do it, though? She does it by taking the hit. They say she takes her violence and she allows them to sit at the temple and eat with them. That's how she ends the violence. She lets them scream and yell, and then she tells them to have a good meal. Sounds like a good mother to me.
Somewhere in here, I'm trying to find it. Maybe I can find it if I keep flipping through. Demosthenes, in one of his speeches, explains it. He says, when Athena has her hands outstretched over the city of Athens, democracy and what's the word? Justice are present. When Athena takes her hands off of the city, we lose it all. He says, I paraphrased it. He says something along those lines. I'll try to find the quote, but he's basically saying all of this that we call democracy and justice is because of Athena. Comes down to it. That's Demosthenes.
Now, Athena Pandemos, is that of the people?
Yeah.
That's the public. She of the public work. That's Pandemos. That's from every neighborhood. Every neighborhood's virgin. Oh, don't you love it? They're walking around like, you're going to go to the festival for every neighborhood virgin? Sure. You going? Yeah, I'm going. I'm going for the War Maker too.
Here it is. I found it. He says, if our city is destroyed, Solon. Okay. So we got Demosthenes reading Solon. That's a beautiful picture right there, by the way. Demosthenes in the 4th century BC reading Solon from like the 9th century or 8th century. I don't know. When is Solon from? 7th century BC? Yeah, whatever. He's reading a past couple centuries. All right, he reads Solon. He says, Solon's poem is read out to the city. If our city is destroyed, it shall not be by the decree of Zeus or the will of the blessed and undying gods, for Pallas Athena, spirited guardian, born of a mighty father, keeps her hands spread over it. No, in their folly, the citizens themselves, tempted by money, are intent on destroying our great city. So too are the leaders of the people with their unjust policies, but their violence will bring grievous suffering, for they know not how to curb their greed and how to arrange in peace festive banquet from what they have already have. So he's basically saying it's Athena with her hands outstretched who guards our city. Love it.
Yeah,
go ahead.
And know that speech that is guarding, that is keeping society, there's a reference to the root of everything, which is the greed. And people say, why is it that the Furies stand there in the chorus and they tell people, they look them in the face, they look your citizens in the face and they say, your greed stains your soul with the stench of ruin. Right? Why are these oldest guardians that Athena harnesses and turns into the Eumenides? That means they're the ones who are well-minded to the city. Why does she turn them into that? For the sake of the preservation of our democracy, baby. That's what she does it for. You know, oh God, the whole thing is sexy. There's nothing, that Greek stuff is sexy. It's hot, right? Dion, it's hot, dope.
It's so amazing. And there's also one thing I want to point out. A lot of people, right, they miss the fact that Athena is also part of the myth of cycles that begins with Uranos, right? She is the evolved form of Zeus, right? We get the story where the oracles prophesied that Zeus is going to have a child with his twin, Metis, his feminine side. So what does he do? He consumes Metis. Right? But what does this cause? It causes him to have a massive headache. So then Hephaestus has to come and crack his skull. And who burst forth from his skull? But Athena, the divine androgyne, born of reason. This is Zeus reformed through the power of the feminine, right? She is that divine androgyne, the coming together of Diana and Zeus as one form, you know, and this is what brings democracy. When you take the feminine and the masculine, you merge it. The feminine wielding the masculine skeptron, right?
For those of you who don't believe Snappy, realize that in the Orphic hymn to Athena or Athana, she is called Difue. So she has both that masculine and that feminine. Remember, when she comes out of Zeus's head, what is she doing? She's naked, and she's known as the one who exercises naked. And she is shaking a spear, and the texts tell us she is the only god that all the other gods fear, right? You're not going to find that about any other divinity. It is Athena and that masculine femininity, you know? Wow. Masculine, feminine virginity. And by virginity, I don't mean physical virginity. I mean the bloom. She is the blooming masculine and feminine in one entity that can not only kill you, but can also heal you because she knows her crafts. Yeah. Oh God, gorgeous.
Beautiful, beautiful. I love that, Ammon. So if you would like, I can bring up your slides now if you wanted to get into your part of the presentation here.
Yeah, I'll just give it real quick. Look, we're looking at liberty, and I wanted you guys to see that this term comes from antiquity, specific from the worship of Dionysus, the Saturnian worship of Dionysus. The Romans had their own tyrants, right? The last one that they had was this guy called Tarquinius Superbus, right? And what does Superbus mean? It means that you think you're above everybody. You're haughty, you're proud, you're arrogant, you're insolent, you're discourteous, you're uncivil, you're rude, supercilious, domineering. You start to get the picture. Somebody who's arrogans in the Roman mind, some arrogant bastard, right? That is the title they gave to their tyrant, and who they ultimately overthrew and established the republic, right? This is the origin. And the dude who does it says, Sic semper tyrannis. Let it be this outcome to every tyrant. The dude who led the charge against the tyrant. That's what he said. Sic semper tyrannis. And if you don't think that's relevant, that is, check out the Virginia State Seal, right? Check out Virginia history when we really have people who step forward and kind of pick up this classical well of information and bring forward. What is the image? Quickly, Ammon, hurry. What is the image? Give me the next one, Snappy, please. It comes from this Greek. Superbus comes from this Greek word, huperbios, right? You can see it's a something of overwhelming strength or might, and mostly in a bad sense, overweening, lawless, or wanton. Wanton is to take license, and you'll see it's connected with the word hubris. You know who does this? People who have hubris. Who are all the tyrants that we are having in our plays? And when I say our plays, this isn't Hollywood writing a script to sell. This is a chorus advancing the worship of the God of freedom. Think about that for a minute. There is no money involved. Why? Because your greed stains your souls with a stench of ruin. Think about that. That's the intensity that these people are coming with. Keep going. Snappy, I got a couple more. We're talking about tyrants. Watch this, people. Are you ready? Who is that tyrant? Who is that person who's hyperbion? That person, Homer says, he says, just look at those who were trying to take all of Odysseus's junk. Look at them, all the people trying to take over his wife, right? And to get her estate and to manage that. These are the people. So right from the start, you can take it down right from the, that's good. Right from the start in Greek culture is this idea that the lawless are those darned pirates who are taking everything. And sure enough, Odysseus's father is Laertes, which means Mr. Booty Snatcher, right? Mr. Booty Snatcher, the booty. He's going to snatch it, right? This is a Bronze Age we're talking about. And here's a Bronze Age word for you. This language is older than the Greek that we've been looking at. This is the Mycenaean. And I just want you to know this is their word for what? Aletheia. Aletheia. This is her. So she has a place. This incredible user of poisons who is bringing our children into the light. Yes. Oh God, it's gorgeous stuff, man. It's gorgeous stuff. And this is Diana, right? In her old form. Give me the next one. Do you want to see her? This is before the conception of Moses by 1,000 years, right? So who is this Aletheia? It's she that comes in need. Would you be surprised if they called her a savior? Yeah, she is the savior who brings parturition, who brings birth. You mean the oldest use of savior was with the process of a woman interfering in nature in order to relieve the pain and promote birth. Oh my God. Now you know why they went back to this, because it was a fad at the time in the 3rd century in Alexandria to go back to this place. You know why God kicked them out of the garden and said, you're going to have painful childbirth from now on? It wasn't because it's fairy tale. It's because this is within the context of those drugs that they were using. And to take a woman from your side was a Greek expression for involving her in the mystery. Oh, God, as a source, baby, right? She's a source. Let's go to the next one real quick. I'll finish up. Here it is. Oh, look, guys, these are lines of Homer, and I'm just going to translate it for you. Who are we talking about? We're talking about the Aletheia, the daughters of Hera. They're the ones who have the antidote to the pain of childbirth, and that's why they send that belos, that shaft. Everything they're working on is a technology, tech that's developed in the Bronze Age, and it's pharmacological. I wrote a chapter in a textbook on the history of toxicology, and I am telling you, the Bronze Age is when these drugs are really skyrocketing, really getting developed, right? They're really utilizing what's in their environment. Now, did the people before them do that? Did those people on horseback, those Pelasgians, did they do this like several thousand years before Homer's doing his thing? Of course, they did too. But the tech really just sparkles in the language from the period. So that's what's really cool. And you can even find Mycenaean lists in Linear B from ship things that they had on ship that they were taking back and forth. It's always drugs, right? I remember talking to him at Bennett, who was one of the guys who cracked Linear B. And I said, have you noticed how many drugs there are on these shipments? What's the deal with that, right? So here is Homer, and Homer says, look, it's these daughters of Hera who are the Aletheia, those who are bringers of that birth, those who cause that pain. And they do it by the poison of that shaft, by that bolt that hits them, right? So, oh God, these are gorgeous. I'm sorry, I'm so excited.
I just want to add something here, Ammon, to that talk about the Mycenaeans. One thing that's really interesting is The archaeology shows also the drugs, but a lot of the archaeologists don't admit that they are drugs. Like two things that we have in mass in Mycenae is the production and importing of saffron, using it to dye clothes. And they have all these paintings where you see these saffron flowers, and then there are spirits that are floating around the flowers, right? And also they're doing the purple. They're manufacturing the purple and using the purple. So yeah, there's tons of drugs that are there, even though people aren't willing to admit it. But,
yeah. And I don't know why, Snappy. You think it would start getting better, and that people would be okay to say, "Oh, look, they were using drugs." Fortunately, I think the scientific side will push that forward, because if you find somebody's offering of hair and it's painted with psychotropic substances, right? You can't really deny that. Here's another word for antidote. I'm always telling everybody in Greek, look at how many words for antidote there are. Here's another one, pikra. Okay, keep going. And this is what they're involving in. What are they? They're the mogostokoi. Those are the women involved with birth pangs, right? And then notice, here was the answer to Dion's question when you asked about Artemis. Isn't this goddess associated with Artemis? Yes. Yep. There it is. Yep. Good stuff. Next one. Here she is. This is the linguistic cousin of Aletheia.
Oh, shit.
It's using the same root, and it's just combining hiera, holy, with it. So what is holy birthing power? It is a festival of liberty. Because Eleutheria is our freedom. And you're not going to believe this. I mean, it's right in front of you. You got to look at it. Convince yourself. But our idea, our concept, our Western concept of freedom is coming right out of a cult of women who were doing things like being involved with childbirth. And when they weren't doing that, they were up in the hills taking drugs, creating Bacchic mystery, led by a bunch of witches that ultimately trace back to one witch who they called Diana. Right? They just openly, right? Oh God, it's absolutely gorgeous. Notice at the bottom, Thanksgiving for liberty. Yay, Thanksgiving. You mean the pagans had Thanksgiving? I thought Thanksgiving was about Jesus. No, it's not. It's not, right? Let's go to the next one. I'm almost done. Eleutherios is that freedom, right? You're talking about somebody who's freed. And people will tell you, your average professor in classics will say, oh yeah, there's this pileus, this little hat that they wear around, and that hat is a symbol that at one time they were slave and now they're free, right? So yeah, there is that association, right? Definitely. But when you are a Bacchant, you have that adamantine freedom. So there's no way you can be a slave. Imagine that somebody who's been a slave for their entire life, and they go off to be involved in this thing they're doing. They get completely wasted and go through a weekend that ends up with them just being exhausted and passed out somewhere, right? And imagine what that would do to somebody's mind who had been bound all of their life. If you don't have that, then you welcome the tyrant. And I think our next slide is the tyrant. Look at I'll hurry up. Here's Zeus. They love the term for freedom so much that they named Zeus, right? One of the Zeuses is this Zeus the Deliverer. It's just another title of Zeus, right? He's going to free us, right? The fact that the Christians are running around saying you're a slave of Christ, that is meant to grate on the nerves of this culture. It's meant to dig in and say, no, this is how we're different, right? Give me the next one. It's a part of the corruption of the mysteries. Yeah, give me the next one. There we go. You can even speak or act free. They've got a verb for this. Let's go freeify, right? Maybe that's what we're doing right now. Who knows? But you'll notice that Epimenides was one of the people who was engaged in this type of behavior, this free speaking. this free speaking. And who's Epimenides? He was that dude that was covered with tattoos, who had this little colt's hoof full of this herb that he would grate off the roots of some plant and snort it. This guy was gone all the time. And he's doing stuff like advising Solon, stuff like that. There's a relationship there somehow. Anywho, somebody quotes somebody else. I forget. Give me the next one. Let's see what happens. Almost done. Thanks for being so patient. People tell me.
Hey,
People have been telling me, especially this weekend, people have been telling me, stay out of politics. Stay out of politics. And I have to tell them, my friend, you don't understand. Politics is a Greek word. The oracles are all about politeia, right? We're just talking about our daily life. And religion, the worship of justice, for example, that's a part of daily life. And so my politeia is going to be exercised because I have that privilege of being able to have access to these texts and to know what these people are saying. So I'm forced to get into politics. And don't tell me that you don't know that I love doing that, right? Because the sharp response that I got from everybody, I was like, ooh, look, right? Who am I, people? I'm the gadfly, right? Of course, the more that horse screams when it gets bitten, the better off you are. The better off you are. So not only am I going to bring politeia, I'm going to bring it right up. I'm going to bring the most graphic stuff, the stuff that you don't want to see. I love it. Give me the next one. I'll finish up here. Boom. Was that it? Maybe that was it.
Ammon.
Okay, fantastic.
Yes.
Amazing.
By the way, I
was
was thinking about something real quick. Just something I noticed. The Eleusinian mysteries being a derivative of the Eleuthuia, the birth-giving goddess. That makes a lot of sense because when you go to the Eleusinian mysteries, you get reborn. So you have to go through the birth-giving goddess. It makes perfect sense that that's the name of it. I love that.
Oh, Ammon, if I could ask you another couple of quick questions. Eleuthuia, she holds the Pelus cap but doesn't wear it. And I think you answered the significance of that earlier, and that's because she's free. She doesn't need to wear that cap. That was one of the questions. Why, in a lot of imagery, she holds it but doesn't wear it, or she puts it on the tip of a spear?
That's a good point.
And Dion, do you have to always ask me questions that I can't answer? I don't know. I've never seen a text that explains that. Not at all. The fact that she's in possession of it makes me feel good, though, because she is giving that to you. Just like Neal just pointed out. Wait a minute. It's like he woke up, right? Wait a minute. It's all about birth. And it's about you being born here. Right? Oh God, I don't know though, Dion. What do you think? What is your speculation on it? Because I don't know.
You answered it. You said that you don't have to wear it if you're already free.
Yeah, nice.
I like that. And the second question, real quick, and I'll turn it over to y'all, is Eleuthuia or Eleuthuius a title for Dionysus?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Somebody asked that as well.
Yeah. I'm scrambling. Hang on, I'm scrambling. Eleutherius. No, I'm trying to think if I've ever seen it. Oh God. I know that he is Eleutherios. I don't know if Eleuthuia, I don't know if that form ended up becoming an epithet for his name. I can't remember. Oh God, Dion, what's wrong with my memory, man?
Questions from your audience love you. They have these questions for you.
Can you share my screen? I can't pronounce this, but this might be what you're talking about, right here.
Yeah.
That's it, right?
That's it. Yep. But look, it's from Eleutherius, right? Which is the derivation from Eleuthuia. So it's that same title that Zeus is going to get. Yeah. And look what the deliverer, right? Latin Liber. There it is.
That's it.
Right? Yeah. Gorgeous spot. Thanks for that question. That was a good one.
Thinking about the Phrygian cap stuff, it brings me about almost 2 years ago now. I was doing deep research into the initiation rites around the goddess. And where that Phrygian cap comes in is always in the shaving of the head rites. Okay. In the Roman, what they would do when they freed a slave is they would shave their head and give them a Phrygian cap. And this marked you as a free man. And it's directly related to these rites of Isis. And the Romans even talked about this, is that to be free is to be in the cult of Isis. These were almost equivalent. What's going on here, Ammon?
It's a mark. It's a mark on the culture. And what do I mean by that? It sounds like bullshit, right? I'm sorry. I didn't mean to curse. I don't want to get you in trouble. It's a way of taking yourself out of the mass population. It's a way of showing, like, we talked about the names on the forehead. That shaving is a religious act that we already have associated with things like the worship of Aphrodite, right? They're head shavers. They do certain things that involve shaving the head. So it's this old, it's there in everything, kind of ubiquitous religious tattoo or mark, right? And that's what happens when you become free and you get that little cap as a little sign, and you take that thing home, you put it on your mantle, and there's your cap of freedom, man. Oh,
I forgot
God,
about the tattoo, because the Romans did that too. They would sometimes tattoo messages, and the slaves would use this to signal revolts, where they would have messages on their head. They'd wear the Phrygian cap, and when they pulled it off, it meant it was time to go nuts.
Want to see what I've got under my Phrygian cap? Yeah, yeah, gorgeous.
You want to pull up my slides?
Yeah, I got you. 1 second here. Okay, here we go.
Right. This right here, you're looking at, is a screenshot from the movie by Francis Coppola called Apocalypse Now. And if you don't know this movie, you got to go watch it. Now, what is he looking at? That's what the Colonel, I forgot the Colonel's name of the movie, but it's played by Marlon Brando. One of the most iconic characters of anything ever, whether it be film, whether it be scripture, whether it be books, plays, music, whatever. Any character, one of the most iconic characters of all time is Marlon Brando. I mean, you all agree with me on that, right? 100%. That character is amazing. But he's reading the Golden Bog, and he's reading From Ritual to Romance. And why is he reading that? Because he's all the way out in another country, and he's realized that the thing he's fighting for is a lie. The thing he's fighting for is built upon a lie. And that lie is Christianity. He's reading the Golden Bog, and he's reading about the ancient mysteries of the dying and rising gods all throughout the ancient Greek and Roman world, Mesopotamian world, Egyptian world. And he's reading about their rituals at these different solstices and the different equinoxes, the rites they performed, and how they connected themselves with nature, the death of the crops, the resurrection of crops. And the reason why I say that is I just got off the phone before we went live. I got off the phone with Paula Carenti, anthropologist over in Italy. She's actually going to come out here. I'm going to interview her in person in about 6 months from now. And I was talking to her just to I wanted to get to know her. I have her books here. I read her books. I actually bought her book in Italian and then used ChatGPT-4 to translate it into English. And she was like, "Oh shit, I can make an English version for you guys." I was like, "All right, good." Because she speaks English. She's pretty good at speaking it. But anyway, I'm talking to her and I'm trying to understand what she's about. And she said that I want to protect my gods. I go, huh? I don't know if she's an atheist. I don't know if she's a Christian. I don't know anything about her. But she says, I want to protect my gods. People who attack the gods, I'm here to protect them. And she goes, I'm here to take Christianity and bring it back down and take the old religions and bring them back up. And I was just thinking to myself, this is so... And by the way, she wrote her dissertation on why James Fraser was right and your favorite Bible scholar is wrong. And she made the point that nobody even reads James Fraser. They just were told by their professor to not like them. Seriously, test this out. Go find your favorite Bible scholar, Bart Ehrman, whoever. Ask what they think about James Frazier. Oh, that's outdated scholarship. Oh, nobody takes that seriously. Oh, when did you read? When did you actually? And then follow up with, when did you read James Frazier? Never. All right. The point I wanted to make is things are about to change. Get ready for it. We're just getting started. But in the Golden Bog, and this will be a transition to what my other slides are. In the Golden Bog, we talk about the rising of the dog star, who's called Yakar in Greek. And it's the Selene Kuon, the moon star. Anyways, oh no, it's yeah. And so he talks about the rising.
Kuon is dog. Maybe it's dog star.
Yeah, Kuon Aster. That's what I meant. Kuon Aster. He says that's what Yakar means. That's what Hesychius has that in his lexicon. And anyways, but James Frazier's talking about what goes on at this time of the year. James Frazier reads the sources, and he finds out that the Roman calendar that we know wasn't the same as the Attic calendar. And this time of the year, this is the way that the people in Attica, I say Attica because it's not just Athens, Eleusis and Megalopolis. So, there's a whole bunch of cities in Attica. And so in these cities in Attica, they have a calendar, and they set their calendar every year. After the summer solstice, the next new moon is the new year, which, by the way, the summer solstice that just happened last week, guess what today is? Today is the new moon after the summer solstice. Today is Hecatombion. There we go. I get the accent wrong. Hecatombion. That's the name of the month. It has Hecate in it. Hecatombion, day 1. Today's the New Year's. So happy New Year's, everybody.
Happy New Year. Happy New Year. Before you jump on, I just want to talk a little bit about the Golden Bough in James Frazier from a religious studies perspective, because this is a really huge point. So around the 1950s, there was a dramatic shift within religion studies to break away from spiritualism and comparative mythology. There was an understanding that by looking at these comparisons, you were entering into the realm of artistry, mythopoetic artistry, right? The realm of poetics, and not something that could be concretely understood through the lens of scientific analysis. So most modern religious studies scholars are not interested in comparative mythology. It doesn't matter how good James Frazier is, how many sources he cites, how similar they are. They apply their scientific lens to specific religions and only look at them through the language and through the lens of that religion. So the idea is Christianity is only perceived within the Christian tradition, and outside influence is outside influence, right? This is a very narrow focus.
Well,
right?
what happened as a result of that, and you're right, it's right around the end of the 1950s, 60s, up until now, now everybody's specialized now. There isn't anybody doing any macro large scale work anymore. Everybody's specialized in their one little area. So then they can't see, and this brings me to I know I'm not a big fan of Plato either. But in this one dialogue, it's my favorite dialogue by Plato by far. It's called Ion. It's very short. It reminds me of Ammon when he was debating Kip, when he says, "You're full of shit." Not that I'm not saying Kip is Ion, but this is what Socrates was saying to Ion. He just erupts in the middle of his talk. He goes, "You're full of shit," and Ion's like, "Whoa, what did I do?" He says, "You claim to be a rhapsode, huh?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm a rhapsode. I'm one of the best rhapsodes around." He's like, "Yeah, okay. You won some awards, great, but you're full of shit." And he's like, "Why?" He's like, "Because to understand Homer, you have to understand that Homer wrote about everything. So if you're not an expert in everything, you can't be an expert in Homer." Now think about that. That's such a powerful thing to say, because we talk about context of things. Talk about the context of the New Testament. It was written in the 1st century in Greek, in this certain part of the world. What else was going on at that certain time in part of the world? Well, who cares? Let's just look at it from a Christian-centric view. Let's specialize. I'm specialized in John the Baptist. I
It's
wrote
all-
a dissertation on John the Baptist. That's all I know. It's like, no, then you have no ability to do comparative work anymore. No, it's almost like it's designed that way.
It also reminds me of like silly argument. Okay, if you're into classics, you'll recognize one of the most debated and argued over topics is Homer. Who is Homer? Is he real? This is hilarious to me because when you go back to the ancient sources, they admit that Homer's a construction and it doesn't matter who Homer was.
Right.
This was not something even to be discussed to the ancient Greeks, but yet us moderns can't stop obsessing over who Homer was. He is a cultural construct, a mythopoetic image, like any deity. It doesn't matter, you know? But this is where our science leads us, arguing minutia rather than seeing the flow and seeing the image. You know,
that was my point about
frustrating.
my point about James Frazier and the Golden Bog. It's such a macro perspective that nobody even has the ability to assess it anymore, because even the people who have PhDs are all specialized in one little thing. They can read James Frazier and not know what the hell happened, not know what the hell they just read. They have to get on the phone with 20 scholars in 20 different specialized fields and ask them what they think about one chapter each. And at that, they still like it's just James Frazier's a different thing. There's no more James Fraziers anymore. They're done. Those don't exist.
They do, but they're in the realms of art, right? You can find this in poetry and in the occult worlds, but you know, it's personal
scholarship, though. I'm talking about scholarship. He was a philologist. He wasn't an anthropologist. He was a philologist.
Yeah, Frazier. Love Frazier, by the way. The image of the priest of Diana having to fight the next priest, because that's how you take over the priesthood. Do you want to become the priest of Diana? Then you kill the current priest. Isn't that awesome? What is it? Apocalypse Now, right? Look what's in the theater. Modern Hollywood needs to look back at what these people were doing and the power that was behind it. I love that. The images there that are captured are gorgeous. That's epic. I mean, that's like, it's beyond. Do you see how it's beyond a story? It reaches out into the ether and it connects with something. It like becomes its own symbol, its own idolatry. I'm sorry. I was getting kind of into that. Go ahead, finish. I'm sorry, Neal, you're not done.
No, you're good. And so, James Frazier points out these rituals of the slaying of the king, where the Babylonians would take a human sacrificial victim, dress them up like a king in purple, put a crown on their head, and slay them as a sacrifice. And then he points out the Hilaria festival with the castration, and the Adonia festival and all the blood falling down from the mountains into the river. All this stuff happening in the springtime. And look, the work he did, no one denies that his sources are legit. No one does that. They just think that because he's generalizing things, then we shouldn't do that. Whatever. Anyways, the point I wanted to get into was the calculation of the new year by the Attics, the people in Attica in Greece. They would check out the summer solstice happen and the new moon. That's day one. So go to the next slide. And every month had these 8-day festivals every month. Isn't that crazy? It's not just, how we look forward to Christmas and Easter and that's it. They had every month, they had these 8 days where they celebrated a birthday for Athena every day on the third day of the month. So you had something to look forward to. There was always celebrations happening. And so the way their work schedule was, they weren't greedy like we are today. All these corporations work 9 to 5, work overtime. Actually, matter of fact, we'll give you double time if you take your vacations off too. That's messed up. Nobody enjoys their life anymore. They're just working and then dying. Whereas in the ancient world, everybody who lived in the polis, the farmers and the city people, they would get together and they would have a harvest and they would cut all the vegetables and fruits and they would hunt some deer and catch some fish and then put it all into one pile and then have a feast together. And they would all sit They would sit there for 8 days in a row. Nobody would work, and they would just party for the whole time. Nobody worked because they were enjoying their lives. They weren't waiting till they're 90 years old to retire and then say, "Oh, look how much money I saved up." And now, even though inflation's going to make sure that I'm going to be poor anyway, who cares? It's a waste of a life. Don't do that to yourself. Take your vacations. Don't take that double pay shit. Enjoy your vacation. It's not worth it. Anyways, next slide. Hecatombion. See, I said it right this time. It's in the Theros, the summer. That's month number 1. And people are like, why did it say July/August? Like I said, because it depends on when the new moon is. It could happen in July 1st. It could happen in August 14th. It could happen anywhere in between whenever that moon hits. It has to be after the solstice. All right, next one. Oh, this must have been from Ammon, so I don't remember this one.
Oh, here, I'll just tag team. Look, here's a Tyrannus. Here's a tyrant, people. Look at it. Look at number 2. Despotic rule obtained by force or fraud. You see the tyranny? It's baked into the language, man. They even had a verb for to kill tyrants. Did you know they would call you? You're a tyrannoktos. You're somebody who's killed a tyrant. It's like a big thing. Like, wow, that dude's a tyrant killer. Right? I talked about Superbus, and I talked about him with the statement, let this happen to all tyrants, right? Look who it is. It's always coming in. Those tyrants always sneak in under that space between the door and the frame. They always sneak in with fraud. Fraud. The ancient Greeks taught you, hey, the tyrants are the liars. Whoever is lying, that's the symptom of a tyrant, baby. Love it.
Yep. Absolutely.
Sorry about screwing that up there.
No, that's okay. Then the word imperious, right? Look, arrogance, people. Superbus. What is the tyrant? Always marked by arrogance. Marked by arrogance. And I think I've got one more. Who is so assured, right? Despotic rule obtained by force or fraud. Right, be watching. Snappy, do you have that overhead of my talk coming up? Because I want people to see. See how engaging we're going to get. Do you see? Lucian wrote a work about Donald Trump. It's fantastic. You're going to love it. Okay, stop. Look at that shameless self-promotion. Go for it, Neal.
So excited for that one. So now we're back to Neal's slide. Sorry about the flip.
You're good. There. So I wanted to show you the beginning, Hecatombion, the month. The name of the month has Hekatos in it. Hekatos, first and foremost, is none other than an epithet of Apollo. It means far shooting. But watch this. It means a lot more than that. It means a few things. Let's keep going. That's the first one. Hekatos, far shooting. It also can mean, there's the epithet of Apollo. Look at on the bottom on the right. It also can be a feminine Hecate, epithet of Artemis. Now think about that. Artemis and Apollo are twins. The twin Lucifer, the twin Eosphoroi, that's what I should say. The twin light bringers. So the twin dawn bringers, Phosphoroi or Eosphoroi. But they have that epithet as Ekatos, the far shooting ones. All right. Now check out the next slide. I think this is from Suppliance. All right, no, this is a different one. Now this is what the name actually means when you put the bion at the end, or boos or bay.
Boost, yeah, boost, cows, baby.
Yeah. Exactly. Boos means cows. See, I knew the Greek guy would help me out with this one. If you add the boos at the end, you get an offering to 100 oxen. And in Iliad, it talks about 12 oxen, 50 goats, 50 rams, bulls and goats, whatever. So you can look at the different various sources from Homer and how he lays it out. But look at number 2, the name of an eye salve. That's a Christing drug right there. So there was actually a name of a drug that you Christ in your eyes called Hecatombe. Isn't that something? And then look at number 3. There was a festival called Hecatombe at the Garante. So that must be an inscription from somewhere. I can't find that.
Notice how big their parties are. Dion, did you notice that they're sacrificing how many? 100? Do you know how many people
And that's not,
we're
they're not
going
wasting
to
it.
have to feed to sacrifice 100 of these oxen? Doesn't that strike anybody as weird? Because that's huge. And think about the fact that they're entering into these festivals, right? Celebrating. And how many of them did he say? There was like 80 of them, right? Yeah. So, yeah. Dion, does that strike you fancy? I can imagine you in antiquity in one of these festivals. Right? Like you'd be doing something. You'd be providing something. I don't know what it'd be.
Well,
but it'd
I'll
probably be connected with a temple.
Well, with those cows, that number of cows, we could do other things with them besides sacrifice them. They could be biotransformers of Kukion that has ergotized wheat. And now their milk is bioactive.
Oh, yeah.
So you're going to need a whole bunch of cows to get everyone high.
Where there are cows, there are the nurse mothers of Dionysus.
Right.
What is the earliest reference in Homer to Dionysus? He is called the mad god of the nursing mothers, right? This is huge. Io, right? The gadfly. We're getting right into the rights there. Also, we're getting into the creepy piracy stuff. Who steals the cows? Hermes. Who is the pirate? Hermes. Who has the cows? Apollo. What are the cows? The oracles, right?
Well, when you said Hermes, I got to say Pytho or Patho, who's also a symbol of freedom or persuasion. I was hoping that she was going to come up as a symbol of freedom in the conversation eventually. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah.
No, and definitely don't forget that Patho is that constant assistant or priestess of Aphrodite. So you can't have the purple and the piracy without Patho. I love that.
Yep. Now I wanted to take you through a translation of Aeschylus's Suppliant Woman. This is an old 5th century BC play. By the way, this translation, you're in good hands. This is a translation from Herbert Weir Smith, the guy who wrote the book on Greek grammar. He translated this text. That's how you know he's a good translator, and it's because he's a good translator, because he's reading Aeschylus, number 1, one of the greatest of all time. He's in my top 3, honestly. Aeschylus is in my top 3 greatest of all time. So here's what it says. And may the altars where the elders gather blaze in honor of venerable men. That word they use there is sabes. It's venerable. I looked it up. Sabes. Thus may be their state but be regulated well, if they hold in almighty Zeus, and most of all Zeus, the warden of the guests. I love that title. Who by venerable enactment guides destiny straight. Here's the big part. We pray that our guardians be always renewed, and that Artemis Hecate watch over the childbirth of their women. Now, Ammon showed this verse on his I think it was the last show he did, where you showed this verse in Greek, but I wanted to show the English because I want people to see this is a good translation. And you see that Artemis has a title of Hecate. What? You mean Artemis and Hecate? Yep. This is what polytheism is about. It's about, think about it like this. Christianity is like Newtonian physics, whereas polytheism is like quantum physics, where things just don't always make sense. 1 + 1 doesn't always equal 2. It could be a bunch of things, and it's quantum physics we're getting at. We're in a whole deep subatomic world right now. So yes,
you're dealing with the infinity of matter, right? And when you're perceiving the beauty of matter, Iamblichus tells us this. How many daimons are there? Infinite number of daimons. How many gods are there? Infinite number of gods. The key is in the image. It's in the perception. Hecate is an image of Artemis, just as Athena is an image of Artemis, just as Artemis is an image of that chaos gap, the womb itself. It all relates back to that, right?
And by the way, I forgot to tell you guys this. And I was talking to Paula Carenti on the phone. she said that. Oh fuck! You just said it. You just said. What did you just say again? You just reminded me of something that she said.
I said there are infinite daimones according to Iamblichus, and that these are also infinite deities.
Yeah, she was basically saying that the polis, the polite, is governed by the gods who keep order from chaos. That without the many, there's only chaos. You have to have the many because they balance each other out. So the chthonic gods balance out the sky gods. The water gods balance out the Chthonian gods. They're all balancing each other out in their own ways. She said that to me on the phone today. I was like, this is the best scholar I've ever talked to in a long time. Can't wait to talk.
And to me, the essential thing with paganism is the affirmation of life and the expression of the universe as continuous. This is really what unites them, okay? The philosophical ideas of matter, you can get into these weird nuances, but this idea that it's an ever-expanding play that needs to be perceived and integrated is essential to any pagan idea. And this is what Ammon constantly harps about. You cannot have monism here. There is no room for absolutes in the face of a continuous, ever-expanding creation where all matter is alive fundamentally.
Yeah, monism. Monism is a virus in the system, and it comes in and goes out. And you have society will progress. When the virus is gone, society will progress to a point where it's not immune, and it'll hit it again. And I don't know. I think that's what Gibbon was trying to figure out. What caused the fall of that classical civilization? And it's if the Furies had any say in it, they would tell you. They would say your greed is the key. As soon as your greed gets out, boom, you degenerate, right? That monism. Because what is monism? If I do this, whatever that is, I'm gonna get whatever that is, eternal life, whatever you think it is, right? It's that greed that drives monism to say, I want one, and anyone that's not bowing to the one is dead, right? Yeah, it's a virus, dude, in the human brain.
You cannot synchronize the elements into one. There have to be there has to be a poly. There has to be many. It's just
what we see in the Orphic cosmogony, and I see this parallels within the Kashmiri Shaivite expressly, is this idea that the drugs allow you to perceive the universal oneness, the interconnectedness of all life, right? But this oneness is also an illusion. And what they say is you have to go through that rebirth, right? Where once the experience of Pan isn't enough. You then have to reaffirm it and recognize Pan in nature.
No, but that's why Pan isn't called one. Pan is called all.
All.
It's the exact opposite. And he's the image of the devil.
Right? But even in like the Indian, for example, you have all this stuff with Shiva and Parvati, where Parvati is matter. And Shiva must see himself reflected in the matter. And through going and making love to her again and again and again, they merge until they become one being. And that's the penultimate moment before escape, when you become the Adrinahari Ishvara. You reform that primordial creation, ascend the throne, and then are placed among the stars. It's just like you see in the Orphic, you know?
Yeah.
I've always wanted to ask you, Snappy, why do you think it is that the Greeks had this conception that Dionysus went to India and conquered them by freedom, freed them up? What is that whole? I mean, it's like it's a big like, oh well, it's like the war with India, right? Between Dionysus and sacred rivers of India. What do you think is behind that?
Well, if you look at the time that they're reflecting upon when Alexander is moving into India, you're seeing a time where you have a massive calcification of the Indian philosophical tradition within the Orthodox Purvam and Mamsaka vision, which is we've now codified our Bible. It's the Vedas. It's set in stone. You know, we have these very set traditions. Only people of a certain caste can come in. But then all of a sudden, around the time of Alexander in Kashmir, where he goes to, you see this revitalization of a primordial tradition, a folk tradition, which is representative of Shiva and Shakti, right? That kind of causes this reverberation. And then you also have the rise of Krishna, who is very much like Apollo. If Dionysus is like Shiva, Krishna is like Apollo. And what I see is you see the birth of the epic tradition, which undermines and challenges the orthodoxy of the Vedas. It incorporates the Vedas. It doesn't break entirely free. But what it does is it challenges the status quo and it flips everything around. In the traditional Indian system, the Brahmins are the highest caste, the priest. But in the epics, the Kshatriyas, the warrior class now becomes the highest. And you get all of this epic literature about the kings and taking responsibility and all of this life affirmation. So what I see happening with the Greek injection of philosophy is you have the birth of this epic tradition. At least it's one of the sparks. There are many sparks, but this merging of the Greek and the Indian is so quintessential to inspiring that epic tradition in India.
Poseidonus of Rhodes, when he was traveling with Alexander, he set up in Bactria in Afghanistan, and then he went to India, and he said he studied there for a few months or something like that. I forgot what he said, maybe a few years, I don't know. But he was there for a while. So he's talking to Brahmins, naked philosophers, magi. There was magi out there, he said. Different castes, different priesthoods, different philosophers. And he's talking to them, and he said they all came to the agreement that Shiva was just an Indian Dionysus not from a comparison perspective, but it was from a tradition that came from the Black Sea through Sabazios. So it's not just they're looking at gods that seem similar. They came to the conclusion that those gods are from the same traditions and they go into different priesthoods.
Where they're connecting themselves to the same Indo-Aryan roots. They're using this noble word. They have this noble lineage that we see across the entire Asian continent.
Poseidonus actually says he calls them Pelasgians. He uses that word. So he says at some point the Pelasgians went east and they went in that direction. At some point they went south in another direction, and then you end up with Shiva and Dionysus, totally different names at that point, because we're talking thousands of years are going by, and they're in different. They're starting to speciate these two different gods. So, anyway, I think it's fascinating.
It's really fascinating. I think also what we're pointing out, I think the magic too in the Dionysiaca is that Nonus is telling us that the pagan tradition didn't get wiped out. He's telling you that it went to India, and that if you're looking for Dionysus, you'll find him in the Indian text. He pretty much tells you, where does he go and set up shop? He makes love to all these Indians. He's spreading his seed, planting all these new gods. That's literally the whole story. So what is he telling you? The pagan tradition didn't die.
Aryans, Anabasis, or is that the one about Alexander the Great? Anabasis? I think so. Yeah. He says when they were all the way out in India, they came up to a mountain that had ivy all over it, and they realized that they were at the place that Dionysus had extended his armies to when he went to India, and they started donning the ivy from the mountain, and they went into mad frenzies. They started having like a trip out, and so they started all going into a frenzy. Talks about Alexander and his and Ptolemy. And all the Seleucus, they're all there. They're all having him and his boys are all there, going into a Bacchic frenzy in the middle of India. That's what he says.
The good old days. The good old days. Is it just me, or is all this talk of magicians and people who do weird things and this gymnosophist and they're all getting together? I mean, totally different, like polytheistic stuff. And they're all getting together. And what are they doing? They're partying. They're enjoying their lives. What the hell kind of world is this?
You're not supposed to enjoy this world. You're supposed to condemn this world, because Jesus is going to come back and kill everybody on a white horse. And you're supposed to hate this world because it's corruption. Isn't it crazy how opposite these things are?
Well, you know what we also start to see with this, we have coinciding with the Axle Revolution, okay, which creates the Silk Road, which spreads horse culture around the world. Coinciding with this, we have the birth of Pythagoras, the birth of Adi Shankaracharya, the birth of the Buddha, and the birth of Confucius, all within 1,000 years of each other, all along that Silk Road. What is the central thing? And when you look at the anthropologists, they're telling us it is this equality that is essential to the tribal structure of life. The horse peoples will integrate other people's ideas. They don't kill you if you're from a different tribe or you look different. They would integrate. This is how you get hordes. Hordes are not one cultural group. There are thousands, you know?
You know, guys, I got another question from the audience. It deals with Lady Liberty holding the scales blindfolded. This goes to Neal, to Snappy, or to Ammon. Any of the symbolism behind that, if you'd like to unpack that a little bit.
Because the one who can see all is blind.
I second that through Callimachus and the Bath of Pallas.
You know, and you know what it has to do with? So it's a symbol of, I'm not looking at you for who you are. I don't care what race you are. I don't care what gender you are. I don't care what language you speak. I'm not even looking at you, but I'm going to cast my judgment based off of principles that are divine. That's what that means. There is no like, who is this? Oh, is he one of us? Or did he pay his fee to the club? No. Liberty is blind. And so she doesn't care what you are. The judgment is just. That's it.
Yep. And it makes me think of this stuff too with Pan. Why does Pan bring the panic? Because to experience the all is to lose yourself. There is no perspective, right? This is what she's trying to say. There is no personal ego, right? She is beyond the gaze. The gaze is really important within the Greco-Roman tradition. This is how the muse function. That's Saturnian magic. This is how you fix something in time. It's a violent act. It's an act of cutting. She is without gaze. There is no judgment. It's not judgment in the sense that we understand it. This is the universe reacting. It's the unfolding of the natural will. Totally different.
I got a couple more slides, I think, but they're important. Trust me, they're important. All right, so we'll go back to that one real quick. So the one I wanted to look at the little notes in the bottom, where whoever wrote this entry writes, Artemis and Hecate were identified in Attic cult, Attic as in Attica, as early as 5th century BCE. The epithet Hecate, far darter, archer, seems not applied to common adjective for Artemis. So basically, they're explaining like Artemis and Hecate are identified with each other in the Attic cult. I love it. He points to an inscription in Attica. You can't click on it, but he just lists one. I guess I wish I could find it. I wish that Perseus stuff had a way to look at these inscriptions they have, because I would use them in my videos every single time. But anyways,
I know half the time I'm trying to find these sources that they're referencing, and it can be I need to find. I know that they exist. I'm sure Ammon has one that has all of the fucking classical shorthand, because there's too many texts and I can never remember what they're referencing, and I don't know. Like, it's like each text has its own tradition of even marking where the lines are. None of them follow any. Like a lot of these systems are like 300 years old too.
Yeah. All right, let's go. Next one. So here we go. Hecatergos. All right, you got it. All right, so Hecatergos. There it is.
No, hang on, Neal. Now look, this is where you're gonna have to insert a digamma in there. You're gonna have to pull it out and say Hecatergos.
So you're saying that right there, that has that automatically on there with that?
Correct.
It's
invisible. You can't see it, right? It's the invisible letter.
Well,
but it's there. Look, you can't have those two vowels. The Greeks, They were musical, right? And even the Mycenaean Greek is broken up into consonant and vowel. When you run two vowels together, it's either going to join or it's going to have a break between the vowels. So that's where the digamma runs in.
Well, look,
and 666, there it is. Love
look
it.
at the bottom. Look at the bottom. So I was going to get to that. So okay, you got an epithet of Apollo, you got an epithet of Artemis. We already established that. This is not new. But look on the bottom where it says at will for the formation of Weka, Wergos. There's that digamma. By the way, if anyone's wondering, the F, that F is a digamma. It makes a W sound. It's the same symbol that you find in the Phoenicians with the yod. For some reason, they do y, and the Greeks did w. I don't know why. They both use the same letter, but they just did it differently. So you got Weka, Weka. Now you're gonna think, some people are gonna think Weka. That sounds familiar. So I did some digging. Go to the next slide. Turns out that Weka is related to the Pelasgian weg. And the reason why we know that is because look at all these words that are cognate to each other. Wake, witch, wicked, Wicca, watch, waken, even vegetable for some reason. I'm not sure why that's in there, but that makes sense because vegetables grow and they rise. But it has to do with willing something. So the word Wicca not only is cognate with Weka, but they're being used for the same thing in different contexts 2,000 years apart from each other. So people are going to watch this and go, wait a minute, Wicca, that's a modern term. Yes, it is a modern term. It just happens to be by chance that there's an inscription of the word Weka from Mycenaean Greek being used as a verb to will something. And then they stop using that word. It becomes Heka. The Weka becomes Heka. But the Europeans are still using that word weg, and it morphs into witch. Isn't that mind-blowing? The words
that is so amazing. Will and witch.
They start off in the same pot. They start off with the same weg or Weka, and then they go like this, and then they meet back up again as witch, because everyone connects Wicca with Hecate, the witch goddess. Isn't that crazy?
That's beautiful. Oh
so
man,
I just wanted to show that on the screen. You get this word Weka coming from the Pelasgian side, and then you got the word witch or Wicca coming from the European side.
Right, and this makes me think of Rabelais, right? This idea too of the will, the magic of the will, which is so essential to the Western magical tradition. And it has far older roots within this Dionysian tradition, right? To manifest the will, to follow after one's will, is to be a star, right? It's to move and flow with the goddess and to follow the muse. It's the same thing. They just transform it from the muse to the holy guardian angel. You know, everyone should read Gargantua and Pantagruel. Okay, it'll change your world.
Beautiful.
That was amazing, Neal. Love it.
That's my slide. Yeah.
Wasn't that guy on cannabis in the story? Wasn't there's somehow a connection there?
Cannabis is what makes him a giant. This really confirms your stuff, Ammon.
Once you follow the track through time of the dragons, you know where it's like you can project it forward to where it's going to hit in history. Oh God, I love this stuff. Everybody check that out. Reading list for everyone, right? Let's do it.
Yeah.
There is a reading list. It's like 2 years old now. And it has most of it comes from Ammon. Some of it's from our community and stuff. Pantagruel is not on it, but we will add it. We need to make a new updated list. But people always ask me for book recommendations, and there's always 3. And these come direct from Ammon, the first 3 he told me to read, which was Petrarch the Secretum, Salome, Oscar Wilde, and Cain, a Mystery, Lord Byron.
Yeah, get ready to blow your brains out when you pick up The Secret of Petrarch. I want to warn you, the preface, and it comes across okay. in English. It comes across okay, but that Latin is so much more crisp. It's like the difference between watching something in black and white and something in color. You know what I mean? Technicolor. That Latin is Technicolor, but read the preface. It's real short. It's like, I don't know, 40 lines or something like that. Read the preface that he put stuck on the front of it, and you're going to see some things in there that if you have ears to hear and you've been watching the symbols, you'll be able to pick it up. And you realize, oh my God, this is one of those texts where I can talk directly to the author. That is what Petrarch's secret is. And good luck with it, because it will leave you in a different place that you came from. You know what I mean? You'll be different. It's one of those books that speaks back to you.
Right? There's some texts are called invoking texts. They're portals, right? They contain an image, right? They are an eidolon. If you want to go to the Greek, look that up in Perseus Tufts and have your mind fucking blown. But read the book, ascend the throne, project that image of the great mother while you do so, and you will be taken. You will be transported. That is the whole point. Beautiful stuff. Now, I want to ask you, while we're on this topic of the reading list, because there are two extraordinarily controversial books that have gotten me in shit. And I want Ammon to explain their reasoning, because they're good reasoning. Marquis de Sade. Why is Marquis de Sade included in your recommended reading list? And why is The Coming Race included in your, those are two very controversial books.
Look,
de Sade. Sorry, go ahead.
De Sade's been a long time, man. You got to give him some credit. There's a lot of labor in the 120 Days of Sodom. And if you really want to understand, the reason that's a must read is because the process of the Bacchic transition starts with a look in the mirror. And that look is an abrasive punch in the nose, right? The mirror is the gadfly, because Bacchus tells you right from the beginning, you have no idea who you are, right? Everything is coming out of your mouth, blah, blah, blah. You have no idea who you are. So what does he do? He gives you your image, and that image is an abrasive punch in the face. It's an awakening. Right? It's an awakening. And again, remember, we're in the right? These are all cultists in the right with the drugs doing the things that they do. So that punch in the face has to be there. That's what the Clockwork Orange does when it opens your eyes, right? And forces you to look into those images. If you don't go through de Sade without coming on the other end a new person, having seen yourself, you missed, right? Your dosage, give him more. Give him more dosage, right? The Ludovico serum needs to be given twice to this person, right? Don't worry. We do it all the time, and we know how it works.
But what about Vril, The Coming of the Great Race? This is some very far-right extreme shit coming from you, Ammon, Mr. Liberal Dionysus. What is the reason?
Is that what he wrote?
Yeah.
He wrote about The Coming Race?
Yeah, because the author was connected with some very important people and was doing something very special that nobody sees except for the Nazis. The Nazis always get this, but then they fall short because they're never willing to go all the way with the language. Right. What Lawton did in that was create the translation of the Aryan language, and he's using. Remember he's the head of the friggin' British Archaeological Hoo-Ha Association, Royal this and that, right? So he reconstructed Aryan, and he used Greek, his knowledge of Greek, to do so. And you can see it when these are the people with the vril, right?
Yeah.
Right. And so to me, that one's important, not as a mirror. That one's important because you need to see a philologist who's working with a language that we don't have surviving. And they are reconstructing using the Greek, reconstructing that language. And
that's what that was with the Wecca. When I essentially was performing that reconstruction ritual by looking at Wecca in Mycenaean and Wicca in English, and I'm looking at them two words, and I'm going, wait a minute, one of them is Germanic, the other one's Greek. How can that be? And if you follow the roots back, they all go back to that weg root, which I think Pelasgian's a fine word you can use, or Indo-European people call it. Just Proto-Greek. It's all it is.
I like Pelasgian better than Indo-European because Indo-European's a wet dream. Pelasgian was real people and real, entering the sources as real horsemen. Yeah, love it. Oh, God.
And then the other question I had, a couple people were asking Ammon, since you're coming at this with a lot of this great mother worship from the Pelasgian lens, people are asking, are you reading Jacob Bachofen in the German classicists?
I don't. No, absolutely not. Sorry, I don't. Yeah. No, I'm a purist. As soon as I found that the primary sources were what had the real life in it, I lost all interest in anything secondary. So people tell me today, they're like, you want to do this? And I tell them, look, years ago, I had a chat with the muse and she said, why don't you stop reading any secondary sources and just stick around with those ghosts? I need that authenticity. I got to smell whatever I'm eating that Jesus is doing. I've got to smell it. I want to smell it. So I try to stay away, but tell me, having said that, why is that relevant? Or maybe it's interesting.
Well, I got a question. I got one of these audience questions.
I got one too for Ammon.
Mastigo, the whip. People are curious about the whip. The symbolic, anything you could tell us about it. It's a mystery out there in the world.
Do you mean my whip? My mastix? Yeah, my mastix was involved in part of my life. Just imagine it this way. Catholic university students trying to understand how these people thought that they, as actresses and actors, that they were going to be portraying. Somebody told me when I did this, they said, you're really Stanislavski. And I was like, who? Or Stanislav? I don't know what it was. Right. But I understand. I kind of understood it as like, oh, you're being realistic. Right. So part of the whole witchy rite is the Bacchic whip and how it's employed in practice.
You know what? At the Hilaria, they do the scourging.
Yeah. Lupercalia, they also, this is the body scourging. There is something about whipping someone within a rite that has real physical mental power to it. And so I took this whip. The reason this whip is so, it's just a horse crop, right? But I took it and used it in the table talks, and people were like, the very first thing they did, this chorus of furies that was going to be using the whip. Medea is depicted as whipping her dragons, whoosh, right? We had these guys out there. How are you going to get into it? You have to show the actors, right? Our head actor was Medea, and she was phenomenal. And I knew that she had to see what it was like in antiquity in order to get it. So, she whipped me on stage in front of the other actors. Now imagine this. This is the greatest moment of my life. This is the greatest moment because we are closer to the reality of those texts than anything I could say. Anything I could say. And these students, they had been studying this play, and they'd been studying how Seneca, what he was putting into the language. I translated for him. And so the whip was, became, now you can imagine when administration found out what was going on, you can imagine what happened. This whip was one of the things that perpetuated me to the place that I could teach antiquity. At the same time, its Bacchic radiation dissolved my career. It dissolved it. And one professor stood up after one of the performances and he goes, you're going to get fired. But incredible job. You could taste with this whip. This will be my answer. Dion, this will be my answer. With this whip, I can bring you back 2,000 years. I can show you a way to bridge millennia of time. And it's just because the Bacchic rituals figured that kind of stuff out. So, hey, get ready for it. Everybody needs a good Gnostics, right?
I just want to add to this some really beautiful stuff. One of the first things Ammon ever told me to read was Frogs. And he prefaced it by saying that Aristophanes was whipped for writing this play because he broke cardinal rules by revealing some of the mystery. And what's so wild about this play is that whipping is an essential theme. Even the god Dionysus, when he goes through the underworld, must be whipped and atone for his sins.
What is he called? What is he called in Frogs? He's called Yake, and he's called Phosphoros.
Right? And he goes through it, and he gets whipped, and it's comical. He can almost get out of it if he could just see clearly, but he goes through it. And it's so wild when you read this book. It reveals so many of the secrets. One of the secrets is when you're in the underworld, you can don a mask and become whoever. Dionysus becomes Heracles. Why is this ridiculous? Because Dionysus is a fop who wears leather booties, and Heracles is this rampaging strongman.
But when he's in the underworld, he's given the name Yake and called the Morning Star or the Light Bringer. So that says something too about the deeper meaning of Dionysus.
It's also funny, you were talking about Aeschylus earlier and saying that he, probably your third favorite poet. According to playwright, according to Aristophanes, he's the greatest of all time. Yeah, and he has my favorite part though. He has Dionysus shame Euripides and tells him, Euripides, you made the gods too human, and for that you will always be second to Aeschylus.
Well, technically, that's what happens at the end. But he technically couldn't figure it out at first. At first they tied. He goes, Euripides and Aeschylus are so close, I can't decide who's better. They're tied. Then he goes, you know what? I have a tiebreaker. Let's weigh their books. And Euripides only wrote Euripides wrote a big chunk of, he wrote a lot of plays, but Aeschylus wrote like 90 plays in his lifetime. So they weighed his books and the scale fell off and Aeschylus wins. I was like, yeah, that's a good tiebreaker because volume, quality over quantity matters, but quantity does matter too. If you do a lot of work, you deserve credit for it.
Right.
So I don't remember Aristophanes getting whipped now. It's kind of, I don't remember it, but if it's there, I'll take credit for that. I'm sure somebody told you that.
I thought it was you, but it could be someone else. It could be someone else, or I read it somewhere.
I wanted to ask you, Snappy, because you were up to a point with a response, and then I needed the other half of it. So when things in religious studies are changing, like in the 20th century, mid 20th century, when things are changing, why is it that I, as a classical philologist, I'm given certain authors on the list like Nietzsche and Fraser, but people are looking, it's like, okay, that's old. We don't really have to go there. And the stuff is brilliant, right? They were great philologists. What happened in religious studies? Was it something there that kind of pushed everybody out of that older
I can tell you what it
20th
was.
century.
I've been thinking about this for years. It's been keeping me up at night, but I think I have the answer to it. Sacred history of the West is Christianity. And when that's threatened, everything implodes. There's no more fabric holding together this Christian West. I'm not talking about us. I'm not talking about liberty. I'm not talking about America in general. I'm talking about a specific set group of people who take credit, and they use the term the West as superior to everything else, and we're Judeo-Christian West stuff, blah blah blah. Jordan Peterson, those type of people. Well, once you have people like Nietzsche and James Frazier who pull back the curtain, and the Wizard of Oz is sitting there looking like an idiot, they need to put that curtain back up. They need to fix it.
You are right. You are right, Neal. You are right, but you cannot view these first of all, you got to imagine religion studies scholars as scientists. This is how they view themselves. This is how they wish to operate, even though they are operating in something that is largely not scientific, right? And they are operating largely, especially in modern times, through the lens of colonialism and English literature. Okay, these are the two fields that have had the biggest impact on modern religious studies thinking, causing these shifts. And I think the real key, while you are seeing this, there are those people who do have this Christian West must be protected, but it's more sinister. How do you convince scientists to uphold the status quo? You tell them that that's science, right? What they have done is they've created this entire scientific way of thinking where the only lens through which you can view the world is through looking at things in isolation. Right? The Greek, this is where these arguments come down. It's so funny because within religion studies, people have serious arguments about things like what is authentic Greek Hellenistic practice? How do we recreate the rites as the Hellenes practiced them? I brought this question to then a historian, a Greek historian, Dr. Carla Ionescu, and she kind of just laughed at me. She's like, what do you mean? It depends on the time. It depends on the city state. It depends on the cult. It depends on the fucking person. Like, there is no orthodoxy in that kind of, but modern science creates orthodoxies, creates lenses, creates canons, and then wants to define said canons so they can write a fucking book on them. They want to give you an instruction manual. Religion has no instruction manuals, at least not the pagan religions. And all of these ideas, my biggest issue with the modern religious thinking is that nothing exists in a vacuum. Everything is in constant conversation. Everything. No image is unique.
That's why it comes down to inspiration. Everything's inspired.
Yep.
That's what the gods are. They're inspirations. That's what they are. They're little spurts of inspiration. That's what the gods are.
And nothing is unique. No one is a super genius. There are no fucking gurus who just magically heard this and developed it out of nowhere. It's an expression of the natural human condition. Mm-hmm. And like I said, when you imagine it as an expression of humanity and as coming out of a moment in time, it far more flows and makes sense. But that's not what scientists do. They cut, they divide, they create boxes and canons and orthodoxies, and it's foolish.
And that's what started from the church. They started that way of thinking, and especially when Thomism became the Catholic official Catholic philosophy, where they Aristotle's Peripatetics philosophy mixes with the church. All of a sudden, you have this, It's really to think about it. Someone like Dan McClellan is the perfect Christian.
It's so funny. Okay, I've been reading.
He really is.
Oh yeah, he's such a great Christian.
He's a great Christian, because he's doing the Aristotelian way of studying and looking into things, being very scientific and correct, and following the orthodox, following the consensus, and doing everything. He's being a good old scholar, and he's also very liberal, leftist, and he's the perfect Christian. He really is. That's what Christianity.
I'd like to say one thing about him real quick, though. He personally is Mormon.
I know.
And so how come he doesn't judge this stuff against his own personal beliefs? Because then that would mean he doesn't believe in the other version that he's judging against that stuff.
I think that you can argue that he doesn't even, I don't think he sees it, but he is biased in his own beliefs. Because think about it. He's not a Trinitarian. Mormons aren't Trinitarians. That just happens to line up pretty well. He has a weird stance on monotheism, which Mormons also possess. So a lot of the things that he's pushing for, that he obtained through rigorous study, happens to line up with Mormonism. The idea that Moses was written about in the 700s, well, there's the book of Nehi was supposedly written in the 700s BC. It's like all these things happen to line up. But my point wasn't to derail the conversation about Dan. My point was, where you're getting at, the type of thinking that comes out of the church system is what you get, and is what you get something like that.
Have you guys ever read On the Nature of Gods by Cicero?
Yeah, I have it right next to me. I have it right here.
One of my all-time favorite philosophical texts. And one of my favorite parts is when it criticizes Pythagoras. And he talks about the problem with mystery cults. And he said, even though the cult of Pythagoras, which I am a member of, has taught me so much, the problem is they want to deify the man, right? And he warns against authority. He says, you must avoid authority, and because then you're limited by whom your teacher is, right? Reason. You must go for reason. And this is always the problem. Religion studies looks to teachers. They look to movements, right? Yeah. They want to divide everything into these things. Like, Neal, you're an expert on Gnosticism. When you look at Gnosticism, are there as many of these minute little distinct groups as these religious scholars want you to believe? Like, do you really think all of these groups are as disparate, or are they just slightly different views that are in the same community, right? Yeah.
They're all calling themselves Christianoi. They're all calling themselves followers. They're all citing Romans.
They wouldn't even call themselves Gnostics.
They're not called Gnostics. Yeah, there were some who did call themselves knowers as epithets, but that's next to their Christiano title. So they're Christians and they're knowers, but not all of them are doing that either. Only a few of them are doing even that. So yeah, the idea that we have to separate the Gnostics from the Christians is bullshit. They're all Christians. They're all Orphics at the end of the day. They're all Pythagoreans, Platonists. They're all coming from the Alexandrian school of thought. All of them.
That video you did recently with that Jewish scholar, I'm trying to think of his name. Oh, it blew my mind. Talking about Yaoism.
Yeah.
That is next level.
That's where it all comes from. And I have Giannis and Adler coming on in 2 days. So.
And Ammon, you could talk about this because you studied with Scarborough. You're familiar with the PGM in depth, and you will see Yao all throughout the PGM.
Yeah. Oh my God. By the way, I just want to say this before you respond to that, Ammon. I did not know how much of a beast Scarborough really was. If you go on, I think it's Academia, or it's one of those EDU websites where they have all of his articles that he ever wrote. He was writing peer-reviewed articles for decades and decades and decades, and there's so much that he wrote that I don't even think I could be able to read all of his stuff in my lifetime. That's how much he wrote.
He would always give me articles, and he would keep copies behind his desk in different boxes. So he had like a library of his own articles, and it just went on and on and on. And he would give me these here. You haven't read this one? Read this one.
And he's translating ancient texts. Some of the standard texts that we have today will say Scarborough under it because he translated.
That's why they asked him to do the PGM, right? Because he was known for the medical side and doing all the medical side. Outstanding work, just real pioneering work, and trying to keep up with everything that he had done through his life. It was impossible. You know, as a grad student, you're supposed to know everything about your instructor, right? You're supposed to know everything about them and what they've done. Oh God, it was so hard with Scarborough. I was like, no. After a while, I was just like, you know what? If you have any really important ones, which ones do you think are the most important? He was that prolific of a writer, and he didn't just do classical antiquity. He did Byzantine stuff too. Like one of the doctors that was in the source tonight, Alexander Tralles, was there, and that's one of the doctors that he worked on. And nobody's heard of him. Nobody does him, right? But Scarborough did. So yeah, kudos to John Scarborough. And the neatest thing in the world was sitting in his basement smoking a tobacco filled pipe with him while drinking heavily and reading sources. That was a marvelous world.
I cannot imagine
yeah.
what his library must have been like.
Yeah,
It must have been just transcendent.
yeah, crazy. It was this whole remodeled basement, right? Well, it wasn't remodeled all that well, right? But it was turned into a giant library, and there was a ton.
I'll probably end up having to turn one of these rooms into a library at some point, because I'm already getting. This room's starting to smother me now. Like there's too many books closing in on me.
So amazing. But Ammon, paint us a picture though, because I think this is really important, because the syncretism of the Mediterranean spiritual world at the time of Christianity really comes through in the magical literature when they're worshiping Moses alongside Yao, alongside Dionysus, and alongside Hecate in the same spells even. Can you talk about that a bit?
Yeah, it was kind of disturbing at first. And Scarborough had told me, he said, these translations are terrible, right? And we had looked at a couple that he did, and we laughed at him. We're like, well, that's as close as you can get, right? But you get this weird bombardment of, look, there's no distinction between worshiping Michael and worshiping Horus and the Jehovah. We'll throw in Jehovah, and we'll have some kind of spell to create some kind of situation that we want. It's real weird. It's like there's no distinctions. Like I have a book on Christian magic, right? Just Christian magical texts. But you read through, that's how it's categorized. But you read through these things, and that thing is just as pagan as everything in the PGM, and it's just as Jewish as everything. It's just as Christian. It's the world of magic is a place, it's a place of practicality. All of those spells are in order to induce something to happen. We're not just going and singing hymns at church, right? We're actually doing something that we're going to expect the universe to react in a certain way to what we're doing. So there's a level of engagement there that's raw and it's earthy, and it has each of those religions in it, and there's no clear partition between them. You could even argue that our partitioning of Judaism and Christianity, that's kind of artificial, right? That it's not really a good way to describe the time, because they were not distinct. Right. Oh yeah, love it.
What's interesting too is there's been a lot of discussion about this, but when you look at Israel at this time, Israel is quickly becoming one of the most powerful nations within the Roman Empire. The Jewish temple, right, is the most powerful temple in the world. It receives more donations, more people than anywhere else.
You know why? Because of the deal that Herod made with Caesar. They made a perpetual deal because they realized that Judea is an important province. It's a border. It borders the Persians, and it needs to be maintained. It needs to be wealthy. It needs to have troops over there. It needs to be. So they made a deal. Herod, you're going to build this temple up. We're going to have it as like the national bank of the East, and you guys can even keep, this is what it says in the sources. You guys can even keep your tax money every 7 years and keep that. So on the 7th year, they have a whole year to save up as much money as possible, and they don't have to pay Rome. And then they start paying taxes in the next 6 years. They did the 7-year thing, and it was a deal that Caesar made with Herod. So they built up Judea. And that's why Philo, when he's writing about Caligula, he's like, "You're nothing like your forefathers. Caesar and Augustus were amazing. You suck. We don't like you." Like he's talking, he hates Caligula, but they love Augustus and they love Julius Caesar because they were helping them out. But anyways,
it's important though to put this into context, because what does this create? It creates a world in which the temple priesthood within Israel has the voice of the fucking Mediterranean. They are preaching to more people than anywhere else. It should be under and they are preaching Herod's version, which is a Hellenized form of Judaism. It should be it should be of no surprise that this goes across the world, but there is an issue. Herod still does maintain the endomatic kind of blood purity between those who are born into Judaism and those who are not. And this is what eventually explodes with this Christianity. It was going to happen because you have all of these people who are on the outside who want in, who are coming and are participating, but not fully, right? It was like a bomb set to go off, right? It's like, it just made sense that someone was going to come around and say, no, we are special too. This is something you see all the time. In the Indian side, for example, we have this process called syncretization, where we see that Sanskrit goes from being this entirely liturgical language, which is held and protected within the upper echelons,
Right.
to being mass produced. And why? Because the people say, oh, you say we can't read it? Fuck you. I'm going to read it, I'm going to write it, and I'm going to do it better than you. And I'm going to translate my text into this language, and we're going to utilize it.
That's when you get Brahmini. It looks like it's basically the same as Sanskrit, but they call it Brahmini.
It's a new script, right? And you get all of this. It's a whole process of syncretization where the very idea of trying to keep it preserved and holy and elite forced it to everyone. And you see the same thing happen in the Mediterranean world with Christianity.
Hey, Dion, you said you were going to ask something. You wanted to ask something.
Oh,
I got a question.
Well, let Dion.
the quick question was, are you going to run for political office? Is one of the questions. I think people would want to actually run. Would you be libertarian if you run? What office would you, or what party would you run for?
Okay. First of all, that's way too much work. That's way too much work. And seriously, Dion, how could I give up sitting here with all of this cool ancient Greek that nobody's read? You know what I mean? That's where my home is. I would never, the closest I ever got to feeling what that politics was meeting John McCain and talking with him a little bit and having the privilege of volunteering for him. I saw that use of power, and I have tremendous respect for statesmen and stateswomen, which, by the way, Liz Cheney, you are the sexiest of the sexy. I'll tell you that much. She's on the, did you guys see that? She got on the list. She got on the list that Trump is going to. He doesn't look. Notice he wants extrajudicial. They want extrajudicial trial of her. He wants a military tribunal. I'm not making that up. That's what he said, right? So who's the sexiest woman? In my opinion, it's the woman that he put on that list. Woman, you know what I mean? Oh God!
Are you saying that you're Cicero and Trump is Caesar?
Yo, you listen to you, nerd. You're gonna get my head cut off and my hands cut off with it. Yeah.
It'll be Barron Trump to do that, not Trump Senior. You'll be around for Trump. It'll be Barron Trump that comes and gets you.
Well,
Barron Trump is Augustus.
He's coming soon. But I would like to throw this out to everybody that we're a fan of both parties, left and right. We love all people. That's what this is about. We're having this conversation to show you how in ancient times, democracy, politics, that there's a roadmap. And you can see what's happened over 2,000 years, 3,000 years of history. Let's not repeat it.
Yeah.
Right? The thing that we're rebelling against is the isolation of power into individuals, right? The destruction of democracy, the curtailing of freedom. And, this is a cycle that we constantly see repeat and repeat and repeat. Everyone should go read the Hymn to the Mother of Gods, Julian the Apostate. He tells you flat out, why do empires fall? When they calcify, when they attack the women, and when they attack the followers of the mother, right? What are we seeing happening right now? They're going against all of those people, the women, the sexual minorities, the cultural religious minorities, right? As soon as your society vilifies and attacks them, you are doomed. The cycle repeats. You are falling into stagnation. This is not about politics Conservatism, true conservatism, which wants to stop time and return to a imagined past, is a death cult. That is a lie. That is Christianity. We have to move in, flow, and adapt to the present, project into the future. We take from the past to project into the future. We are not trying to recreate an imagined past that never fucking existed. Screw your goddamn MAGA.
You should run for office here. I know you're Canadian, Snappy, right? So come down to the U.S. and get us going. We need some kind of help from our northern neighbors.
We have the same problem here. We have the same Christian psychopaths coming for women's rights, coming against sexual freedom, and they're using the same bullshit. We got to protect the children. Who's after the children?
I got to follow
the Christians. Those are the ones who you need to protect your children from. Look at your bloody priests.
I get them. This is the most common comment that I've been getting in the last couple of months. Asking if Ammon is the Antichrist. Ammon, what do you respond to these charges?
I walked up to Carl Ruck. He said, "How you doing, David?" And I said, "I hate that name." He said, "Do you have another name?" I said, "I've got two other names, Charles and Ammon." And he said, "Why don't you use Ammon? That's a good name." I went home and pulled off my shelf a text at random and opened it. And it said, after my question was for the muse, I said, "Who's Ammon? Show me who Ammon is." And it was Isidore. And Isidore said, "Ammon is the Antichrist." So you take that for what it is. Yeah.
So what is the Antichrist really? It's an antidote. It's an antidote to this fucking brain rot. And you know what? You are providing an antidote in a sense, Ammon. You are that gadfly. So yeah.
I'll take it. Send all of your hate, right? Or your support, right? Somebody's going to support the Antichrist, right? Send it all, right? Send all your vibes, your good vibes, because we do have an antidote. And believe it or not, it has to do with going back and looking at the actual language. It's physical science here, people.
Did that?
Love it. Just like Cicero, just like you were saying, Snappy, with Cicero in his De Natura Deorum. Yeah, right. And his De Divinatione, right? His work on divination, where he's really harsh. He's really holding. He's harsh on those diviners, those soothsayers, really harsh. And he's holding to that reason. Oh, God, that classical power is the only thing that will save us from tyranny. And I think they understood that in the early
dialogue is so good, because you have in this dialogue, you get an Epicurean, you get a traditional pagan polytheist, you get a Platonist, I think the other guy is, and then I forgot I don't know. There's like a few people in this dialogue, but they all represent different mindsets, and they're all just debating each other. And it's like, that's kind of what you need. You kind of need different opinions and different worldviews and let them clash into the marketplace of ideas. See what happens.
Right. And also it's like, we are not trying to be political in the modern sense of politics. What we are doing is we are standing up against fucking tyranny. You want to know why no one's talking about Biden? Because Biden is not talking about being the God King, second coming of Christ.
He's not talking about anything.
He's just a stupid, senile piece of crap. I could give no care about Biden. Screw him, screw his son, screw everyone who ever voted for him. Okay? The point is not this. We need to focus on what these guys are doing. When someone comes and tells me they want to be the God King, that is when I get upset. Okay? And that's the issue.
Yeah, the robber's at the door, man. He's going to come in. He's going to kill you. He's going to take your kid and sell him on the black market. Forget about Grandpa. Grandpa's up. He's asleep upstairs. Somebody tell Grandpa, please. Step aside, Grandpa. You know, part of being a hero is knowing when it's time to step aside.
Yeah, seriously.
You know what I mean? The Republic is about to undergo an insurrection, right? We didn't stop it the first time.
Almost
We didn't hold the head responsible. You're gonna have another one. You're going to have another one. How do I know this? It's what Dion said. It's just history, people. Just study the history of it. Study how tyrants are and who they are, and you watch it happen right in front of you.
It's also
Nothing to do with parties, nothing to do with what you call politics and your ideas about this issue or that issue. It has nothing to do with that. It has everything to do with the nature of tyranny.
Yep. And just like with the nature of tyranny, then you can jump in, Neal, it's just that it's always the other side, the ruling power, that inevitably brings about tyranny. And how do they do it? Through not honoring their promises and not doing anything else. So we are not allowing the other sides to get a pass. If far rightism comes to my country in Canada, it's Trudeau's fault to blame. It's Trudeau's fault. And just like if Trump gets reelected, Biden is partially to blame, major to blame. He needs to bow out, like you fucking said.
Well, if somebody would have said in the year 48 BC that wow, that was a Freudian slip, that Caesar was going to cross the Rubicon with his troops and walk right into the Senate and take over like a king, they would say, you're nuts. They would say that hasn't happened since Sulla in 40 years, and that'll never happen again. Trust us, that's not going to happen. No one likes Sulla. Because Sulla was like the monster. Everyone hated Sulla at that time. He's a monster. No one's ever going to repeat that. Well, he did. So it's always right before it happens where everyone goes, that'll never happen. And then it happens.
How did the tyrant get elected?
By the way, Caesar also was the high priest. He used religion to get himself raised up into power. Yep. He was a high priest before he went to Gaul.
Right.
So he became the high priest of the empire and then used his powers as the high priest to do certain things and pay people off and get himself up and do it. Dude, I'm telling you, they always use.
His family was always the high priests. He was in the bloodline. He was set to become the priest, but then he became a general for political gain. So it was like this close. We could have had a Hierophant papal Caesar, and the world would have been very different. But I also want to remind us all, Solon, what did he do to become the tyrant? He brought back the Dionysian religion. That's how he did it. He stole the religious cult and used it to establish power. And
he gave freedom. He gave freedom, Snappy, to people who were crushed by debt from all the rich SOBs that were destroying their society, their polis. And he freed them from that. He said, no more debts. He waved his magic wand and said, no more debts. You're free. Right? Oh, God.
Right. And it's always that promise of freeing of debts, right? In the fear of the outsider, all of this stuff that is always the same game. It's always the same ploys, right? Here's the reality, though. There is no beautiful, imagined, perfected past, right? We have to confront the issues of today. They are not the issues of yesterday. And if you refuse to pay attention, then we will all be squashed. And this is one thing. The goddess, nature, she has one command. Adapt or die. That's it.
By the way, you know who was looking back and doing some comparisons of old religion versus the new religion is Machiavelli, who I actually have I can share if you want. There's a couple quotes. You cool with that? You want to do it? All right. I got it ready to go.
I'm so down.
This is from Discourses on Livy. So let me just fill everybody in who's watching. Machiavelli is writing in the 14th century in I don't know where he is. I think he's in Venice or something. I don't know. He's in some Italian city. And he's thinking about things. He's reading Livy, 1st century BC source. He's reading it and he's looking back and going, "Huh, what a different world they were." So if you don't mind, pull up that screen on the bottom.
Yeah,
I'm gonna blow past this, but I'm gonna read the important parts. He says how important it is to take account of religion and how Italy, lacking in religion, thanks to the Roman Church, has been ruined. I can't believe he got away with that shit, dude. He says those princes or republics that wish to maintain the integrity most above all else, maintain the integrity of their religious ceremonies and must always hold them in veneration, because there can be no greater indication of the ruin of a state than to see disregard for its divine worship. This is easy to understand if one knows how the religion in the place where a man is born has been founded, because of the life of every religion has its foundations in one of its principal institutions. The existence of the pagan religion was founded upon the responses of the oracles and the sect of diviners and soothsayers. All the other ceremonies, sacrifices, and rites depended upon them because they simply believed that the god would predict their future. He says, good or evil could also grant it to you. From this belief arose the temples. From this the sacrifices. And from this the supplications and every other ceremony devoted to their veneration. From this the oracle of Delphi, baby, the temple of Jupiter Ammon, and other famous oracles which filled the world with wonder and devotion. So you need that. You need that multiplicity of different temples with different goddesses and gods. It brings color into the world. Everyone brings the world to life.
I just want to point out how freaking ballsy this is to write at the time that Machiavelli is writing in Italy. Like, holy crap.
I know. I love this. This is one. It gets even crazier. Just let's continue. He says, okay, so I want to, okay, so there's that. There's, he kind of just goes through it. And then he says, hold on, I promise this is going to be good. Right here. Okay, I wrote, oh my God, in my highlighter. He says, let me just make sure I didn't skip anything real quick. The clerk, okay, here, I'm going to read down here. He says, to their question that there might be a chance of expected, their opinion and credulity was strong, encouraged, and supported by Camillus and the other rules of the city. If this kind of religion had been maintained by the clergy of Christian republics, just as it had been instructed by its founder, Christian states and Christian republics would be more united and more happy than they are now. Nor can there be another better basis for speculating about its decline than to see that those peoples who are nearer the Roman Church, head of our religion, have less religion. Anyone who studies these fundamental principles and sees how different present practices is from them would judge it to be, without any doubt, very near either ruin or punishment. Since many are of the opinion that the well-being of Italian cities arises from the Roman Church, I want to discuss the arguments that can occur to me against this opinion, and I shall cite as evidence two very powerful ones, which, in my view, cannot be refuted. The first is that because of evil examples set by this court, this land has lost all piety and religion. This brings with it countless disadvantages and countless disorders, because just as we take for granted every good thing where religion exists, so where it is lacking, we take for granted, on the contrary. We Italians have, therefore, this initial debt to the church and to the priests, that we have become irreligious and wicked, but we have an even greater debt to them, which is the second cause of our ruin. That is, the church has kept and still keeps this land divided. And truly, no land is ever united or happy unless it comes completely under the obedience of a single republic or a single prince, as has occurred in France and Spain. The reason why Italy is not in the same condition and why it does not either have a single republic or single prince to govern it lies solely with the church. Because although the church has its place of residence in Italy and has held temporal power there, it has not been so powerful, nor has it possessed enough skill to be able to occupy the remaining parts of Italy and make itself ruler of this country. And on the other hand, it has not been so weak that, of fearing of losing control of its temporal affairs, it has been unable to bring in someone powerful. You get the point. You're muted.
Bravo, Machiavelli.
So
I love it.
What guts? What guts? That's gutsy.
I also wanted to point this. If you guys want to see what the medieval church is like, read Boccaccio's The Decameron, and you'll see what they do in plague times. It's as bad as Machiavelli makes it out to be. And I think, though, this really reminded me something, a central point that Ammon was making. And I feel like it's a central issue that is in the heart of this kind of Christian religion, of any religion that is about binding and anti-love, right? I think when you start to get into this denying of the self and denying and making things evil, excluding parts of reality, right? This is the central problem. What does the Dionysian say? You must experience Pan. You have to rub your nose in the shit, right? You have to go through it and see yourself, see the reality, recognize that you are capable of violence, are capable of the most despicable stuff. The Christians say, no, you just must pretend to be like Jesus. Self-deny, self-deny. You can't self-deny. That ugliness comes out. This is a denial of the self. You have to learn to control your ugliness. If you deny it, if you pretend to usurp your will and invest it into the image of someone else, if you constantly deny yourself and say you're a sinner, it's going to explode in violence and in aggression. It always does, right?
Yep.
Gorgeous. Applause. I love it.
You notice how he starts off the chapter with talking about how great and colorful the world was in the old pagan days. Yeah. He names off the Temple of Ammon, the Temple Oracle of Delphi. He says they kept it all together. And he's like, what great and awe-inspiring things there were in the world. And now he's like, everyone's divided by the church and everything's shitty. Everyone's wicked and there's no more. People don't even believe in the gods anymore. They're like, they don't even believe the shit. He was noticing that in the 14th century. That's what people thought. Nietzsche was bringing up some new observation. Nope. Machiavelli was 500 years before Nietzsche.
We see the same thing in Byron. I was reading Don Juan earlier today, and he says it right out. He says the Christians hate love, and they tell you that they are the sole bringers of love and that only love is achieved through them. But what they offer is not real love. What they offer is not real forgiveness. Real love and real forgiveness would be okay to express and experience the bloody world,
Right. Absolutely.
And this is the fundamental flaw here. You cannot deny your nature. You cannot deny reality. You must confront and deal with the ugliness. You have to turn the shit into life, like Dionysus does, right? That's the fundamental magic.
Yeah, exactly. It's that mirror magic, man. You're going to look into the mirror and we're going to show you exactly who you are. Well, apparently you can put somebody into a death state and yank them out of it and show them not only who they are, but the rest of reality around them on a quantum level. So I'm totally, this is what brings freedom, right? Not the tyranny of the monist one. Yeah. And this funny thing, it's why there are so many associations in Greek between the numbers and physical principles. They are not distinguishing their math from their real world, from their reality. So, oh God, they're brilliant. It's brilliant. I want whatever it is they were on, and yeah, I want to go back there. Is there a way to bring it back? I don't know. Probably not. What do you think, Snappy? Is there a way to bring this all back?
Yeah, and I think the key is we have to bring back these rights. We have to bring back the theater. We have to learn to experience that all, which means you got to go through the tragedy, through the comedy, through the satire. You got to rub your nose in the shit, and you have to deal with life as it is and learn to confront the problems as they are as a community,
I've wondered if there's a way to bring it back through the stage. But you would have to you would have to get everybody doing the, what do they call it? Stanislavski or whatever. You'd have to get everybody into the cult, right? You'd have to go through there is something about striking another person with a whip that not only does something to the person who's struck, not only brings them freedom, but it brings the person who's striking them freedom as well. And if you don't understand that, it's because you didn't read de Sade, right? You didn't look into that darkness, right? And why? Because I don't know, maybe you want to go to heaven and you gotta keep your, nose.
You got to explore your dreams, people. You got to go to the depths of your dreams. If you're not doing that, you're not living your life. You got to experience all of that ugliness, and it's all exists within you. That's the other thing. This is a harsh reality for people. All exists within you. And you have to learn to experience that within the self and transmute and transmorgify it. Have you guys read Antonin Artaud?
Mm-mm.
Okay. You need to both read Antonin Artaud. He wrote an amazing book called Heliogabalus. It's part history. He went and he did the serious historical research.
I've heard of it.
And part of it is
Heliogabalus.
Heliogabalus.
Yeah.
Part of it is a magical performance. So he didn't just write the book. He went through a possession where he became Elagabalus, donned his dress, became the embodied androgyne, and he performed the play to a woman who then wrote it down, and then he edited the book. So when you get the book, it was first performed as a magical performance. And the whole idea is that he's saying Elagabalus is part of the problem. He tried to bring the monism into one being. He tried to reflect all of reality into one person. And it fundamentally exploded because he couldn't contain the patriarchal authority and the anarchy of matter in a single being. And it gets so wild. And he talks about all these vampiric rites and how this is what he was engaged in. And how you can understand, only way to truly understand Heliogabalus is to understand him as someone who was born in cult, you know?
So tell me something. Would he have any kind of like connection, not necessarily an actual connection, but like a metaphysical connection? Would he have a connection with Byron's vampire? Is there something going on there?
There's something wild going on. Okay, so I'll just tell you guys, Artaud goes so crazy, he goes so magician. He invokes the apocalypse upon himself. He says that he became Jesus Christ incarnate, and he goes through a death and rebirth where they stick him in a mental institution, and he is forced to go through electroconvulsive shock therapy. And when he comes out of this, he starts calling himself Artaud the Momo, and believes that he has seen, like he's the bigendered God, and that he is driving humanity forward. And the whole purpose, his whole purpose of life is to teach people how to die while they're alive so that they don't die when they die. It's the most bucket stuff I've ever read in the modern age.
Right?
What, sorry?
Sounds like the mysteries.
It is this is what I'm saying. This guy's a dragon. Artaud is a dragon, hands down.
Is that amazing? He got there via the lightning. Look at how the muse just wrote in his life experience with everything that he was drawing from his sources and from his eidola, right? His images, and his life ended up being. That's fantastic. I got to go read some. It's Artaud. Is that who it is?
Antonin Artaud. I'll send you the link. But he's written a ton of stuff, but his whole big thing was he wanted to reclaim theater and return it back to the mysteries. And he wanted it to be about experiencing the visceral. And he wanted the theater to be a living body, right? And the actors to be possessed.
Right. when I was, that's the closest I ever got to the reality, was taking those students through those rites. That's it. You're right there in it. Isn't that what acting is for? They weren't supposed to get paid, right? This is the religion, bringing the God via possession. And there's some kind of serious power there, because just by the act of us doing that, the entire community around us erupted between two groups of people, those who watched it and loved it, and those who thought it was the end of the world coming up. Snappy, what would it take to get actors and producers and directors to go back to the sacred? Is that possible, or is the
100%,
world?
100%. We see actors. Okay, if you ever talk to actors, real serious actors, they are into this. The issue is always corporate. And I think really you can see the kind of mystery on display if you go to real serious theater. The biggest problem is the fourth wall. right? In the real Greco-Roman theater, there is no separation between you and the actors. You are a part of the chorus. You are engaged in the play, you know? So you still see this kind of radical performance and radical transformation, but it's uncomfortable, you know? It makes people freak out. They don't know how to perceive it. They get cringed and shocked. When you see an actor become possessed by a spirit of another, it is.
By the way, the best Hollywood actors are all agreeing about this. That there's an actual. That's what I mean by inspiration being what the divine gods are. There are little sparks of inspiration. It's the muse inspiring you, and that's why actors like Leonardo DiCaprio or whoever, they actually are possessed when they're in their roles. They turn into different people. Or at least that's how Carl Jung wrote a lot about this too. There's a big psychology behind it, but there's something. It's crazy. Look what's the way. Share my screen. Look what Cicero says about the mysteries. Can you see it? Oh yeah, you got it. It says, "For among the many excellent and indeed divine institutions which your Athens has brought forth and contributed to human life, none, in my opinion, is better than those mysteries. For by their means we have been brought out of barbarous and savage mode of life and educated and refined to a state of civilization. And as the rites are called initiations, so in very truth we have learned from them the beginnings of life and have gained the power not only to live happily, but also to die with better hope." Damn.
Oh man,
fantastic.
Neal, you just took it over the top. That was the cherry on the top of the cake. Right? Nice source work. Look at him. He's like a Sith Lord, man. He just comes. I love that. Beautiful.
Cicero is the goat for Latin philosophy. Him and Seneca, for me, doesn't get better than that. But I think this is a good point to wind down. We're at the 2:30 mark. This has been so much fun. Thank you guys both for coming and chatting about the Great Mother and Dionysus and really get into the thick of it. What do you guys want to leave our audience with? What are the final messages today?
I'll go first. I'll just say, man, we talked about a lot. Because I really do want to see a world more colorful again, more diversity in people expressing their divine inspiration. Build a temple. Pick a goddess, whatever your city wants, and then take care of that temple. Make it your kids' favorite temple, and then their kids can take care of it. Start. That's how it's got to start. We just have to start building stuff.
Pursue beauty. Find the beautiful in the natural world and strive to show it to others. And the more, here's the thing, a true idol, right? An eidolon, what is happening here? Iamblichus tells you, the more you perceive, the more you worship, the more it is real, the more that connection manifests. You want to engage in this, create an object of art and beautify it. Present it to the world. Be in that loving adoration. This is the sentence, Bacchus in adoration of Venus. That's the whole mystery.
Follow liberty, because if you don't and you end up with tyranny, you're not going to like it. And neither are your children. There's a lot of people in history who've been telling us just that. Follow liberty. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you guys so much. This has been so much fun. Make sure you all come out tomorrow night and check out Ammon is doing an amazing live stream talking about Lucan and the tyrants in hell. This is going to get super, super wild. It's going to be so much fun. Neal, Gnostic Informant, has been working on a long form takedown video of Dan, Duck Dan, Mormon Dan, Dan McClellan. It's going to be so much fun. Make sure you check that out. Do you guys have anything else in the works that you want to promote?
Yeah. Well, let's just say I got some good projects coming out. Let's just leave it at that.
Neal's always got projects.
Yeah.
Ammon always has his regular satanic initiation on Friday and his Greek classes on Wednesdays. So make sure you come out.
What happened? You sound like a mafia guy there for a minute. Let's just say I got projects.
Yeah. Because I got Paula Carenti's coming out, and we're going to work on some stuff together. She's going to help me. Actually, and Derek even said that he wants to get her on and talk to her about some of this stuff. But anyways, then I got Janssen Adler, whose book I have over here. Doesn't matter. But I got his book over here, The Origins of Judaism. I thought, I'm thinking it's going to be like Gad Barnea and talk about 3rd century, the stuff that we have. He goes even farther. He said, no, it's like 1st century BC. Yeah. And it's crazy. It's going farther than I'm going. And this is a PhD from, so you'll see. I'm having him on pretty soon. And on the 9th, we're going to record. So I'm not going to drop it right away. I like recording because then if we go live, it can be choppy and the super chats. And I like to record. I like to show visuals. So I'm going to jazz it up. But I got projects coming out.
Exciting. Those sound amazing videos. So everyone, make sure you like and subscribe Neal Gnostic Informant to check out all his new content coming up. Make sure you follow Ammon at Lady Babylon 666 and tune in tomorrow for his live stream. And we will be back next month for the new moon. Also give a shout out to Dion. His internet out in Cali kicked him out, so send him love. But yeah, we will be back next new moon for another Occult Exploration Society live. And if there are things you want us to talk about, come to the Discord, send us a message, and we can go deep. All right. Thank you, everyone. This was a lot of fun. Peace and love. Hail Satan. Take care.
Satan.
Hail Satan.